Missing chart?
Yeah, it looks like, he told me he was gonna try it, but
Yeah, he said he was not going to be here, so not being presumptuous.
No, he's definitely.
Recording stopped.
I don't think you don't see Ken on there, right?
Recording in progress.
Time being 6 o'clock, I call the May 21st, 2026 Town Council, Franklin Town Council meeting to order. Can I have a moment of silence, please? Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Note, a note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or live broadcast on Comcast 9 and Verizon Channel 29. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using the number 1-929-205-6099. To participate in the meeting remotely, citizens may join the Zoom webinar. Meetings are recorded and archived by Franklin TV on Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel and shown repeatedly on Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. The Zoom webinar detail ID number is 815-4448-0170. Any participants who wish to speak must enter their full name and address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon joining the webinar. In order to speak, participants will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before commenting. Announcements from the chair. We have no upcoming town sponsors event. I read them last night. Unfortunately, Councilman Ken Ukajuka may join us through Zoom, but he might not be because he is traveling. That's it, no citizens' comments. So we have license transaction, Farmers Winery Farmers Market License, La Cantina Winery. License transaction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a license transaction for Farmer Winery, Farmers Market License to Mr. Robert Vozella of La Cantina Winery, located at 230 Cottage Street, Franklin, Mass. 02038. This is a request for a Farmer Winery, Farmers Market License to allow sale of bottled wine at the Franklin Farmers Market pursuant to Chapter 138, Section 15F.
Look at the license transaction. That's the motion.
I can read the motion if we're ready for that.
You do.
Any discussion?
No, read the motion.
Okay. The motion is to approve the issuance of a Farmer Winery Farmers Market License to Robert Vozella La Cantina Winery Company.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second discussion. I mean, everybody pretty much knows Rob, so.
Yeah, just keep
We've
doing.
approved this also
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 years in a row.
Yeah,
Yeah,
There's a lot
I
of
mean,
standards.
he's an old vet at this point.
yeah.
Doing a great job.
Yeah.
Doing a great job, very good to the
Is he
community.
on
so-
right now?
I don't know if
He
he's on.
is.
He's on.
He is.
Okay. Do we want him to?
We'll let him in as a panelist if you want. Or, oh, there you go. There he is.
Good evening, how we doing?
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
Good. Yes, I appreciate taking the time tonight to approve this license for the Farmers Market Winery. As Jamie alluded, yes, this is at least going on year 6. So,
You couldn't have brought us any samples, Bobby, tonight, or anything would have been a little
I know.
helpful. It's okay.
you might need it.
It's all right.
But,
It's all right.
That's all right, we still love you, bro.
It's all right.
No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Any opposed?
No opposed.
Congratulations, Bobby.
All
It's
set.
May 21st, yep.
21st. All right, at this time, I will declare the public hearing open at 6:05. I think we're gonna go back, we'll go to the public, right, first? But is there anybody in the public that wants to speak? Who do we have on Zoom? Do we have anybody on Zoom? One person.
One attendee.
Okay, so we did the, Jamie, we did the historical commission, right? I was gonna wipe out the small ones.
Yeah, you did the historical museum. The only other quote-unquote small departments are the arts, culture, and creative economy. And then the interest, I think, was just benefits might have been a question or two.
By Steve, yeah.
And
So,
then, I think the rest are the
big ones.
3 of
yeah.
the big 5. Yeah, you did Tri-County.
Yeah,
So then you got police, facilities, and DPW.
yeah. So why don't we do arts, culture, creative, economic?
Sure.
Ted held that, so,
Hey, I'm gonna sit just because I have lots of paperwork.
come on up.
All right. Hi, everybody. How are you?
Good, how are
is
you?
everybody?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Since I held it, Corey, I'm just going to let you lead before we get to questions, okay? If you want to just give us a synopsis of your department and the work you're doing and, for the benefit of those listening and everybody here that may not know kind of what it is that you do, that'd be helpful, okay?
Absolutely. Is this on? Does this work?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me okay? All right, well, taking Ted's lead, I will begin with just giving some generalization of my job. I'm the Director of Arts and Culture and the Creative Economy for the town of Franklin. And in this economic development tool that supports creative businesses, activates the downtown cultural district, and contributes to the overall tax base. Arts and culture are a lifelong community asset that connect generations. You don't age out of them. This intergenerational value is the core of cultural tourism, which operates across multiple levels of engagement. It attracts regional visitors to Franklin while also creating meaningful everyday experiences for our residents. The level of impact doesn't happen by accident. It's built through intentional layers of outreach and engagement and begins with community planning and stakeholder input to ensure programming reflects the needs of the community. It's strengthened through grant applications and external funding strategies that expand offerings without increasing the burden on taxpayers. From there, the work is carried forward through partnerships with local organizations, artists, business, and amplified through coordinated marketing, both digital and print, to ensure that we are reaching a diverse audience. The strategy directly influences economic behavior by shaping awareness, participation, and visitation patterns. So in a nutshell, my workflow is really about connecting the community and acting as a bridge facilitator and ensuring that arts and culture are part of the community conversations and a highlight, as well as understanding that they are a huge economic driver. Actually, in Massachusetts, cultural tourism is the 3rd leading sector in the state. First being, I heard this at the Massachusetts Office Tourism Summit. They said the meds and the eds were 1st and 2nd in Massachusetts, and cultural tourism coming in at number 3, earning, I think it was like $25 billion for the industry. So that's a generalization of what my job is, but I would like to also dive into a little bit of the strategy to which that I'm bringing into Franklin. And I feel like this is nice and cheeky, which I love this title. I'm regionally and seasonally figuring this cultural strategy out. My approach to this is what I'm referring to as the regional and seasonal framework. It's built on 3 pillars of community programming, marketing, and public art. Together, these functions operate as a coordinated system and designed to grow Franklin's cultural activity and its regional economic impact. The community programming is the foundation of the system. It is the content engine that produces the actual experiences that people are attending. This includes public art installations, community events, workshops, festivals, pop-up markets, and vendor activations. Together, all of this creates consistent cultural activity throughout the year, repeatable and scalable events, and a calendar of reasons for people to visit Franklin. This leads to, once programming is established, it's organized into seasonal cycles that create predictability. And this is where the scalability and the long-term planning really can ramp up. The structure is important because it encourages the repeat visitation and anticipation of our regional visitors. It aligns with our tourism and visitor behavior patterns. It allows vendors and artists as well as partners to plan ahead and to be able to factor in their marketing and all of their programming that they need to get in line for their budgets, and establish a recognizable annual identity for Franklin. At this stage, it's where programming shifts from individual events to repeatable cultural infrastructure. It's not just these one-off events that a group is doing this here and there and this is happening over there. It's about strategically bringing it all together to create this infrastructure and an infrastructure and ecosystem of all the different community groups in Franklin. The marketing on this end is our demand driver. This is what converts programming into regional visibility and measurable economic activity. Through targeted social media storytelling and outreach, marketing accomplishes these 3 goals: expanding awareness beyond Franklin residents, positions events as regional destinations, as well as generating measurable data on audience and engagement. Without marketing, programming remains local. With marketing, it becomes regional, and that's where we get those dollars from our visitors. The regional capitalization is the economic development outcome. When programming, seasonal structure, and marketing are all aligned, this is what brings the measurable economic impact. It brings increased regional visitors, as I just mentioned, higher local spending at restaurants, vendor and artist participation from outside of Franklin. It activates the hotels and overnight stays for multi-day events, and more consistent downtown activity throughout the year. And this all operates on a continuous cycle, with each last cycle building on to the next one, creating a self-reinforcing system of growth. And as I mentioned earlier, this is my strategic shift and why my role exists within the municipality. Programming is no longer isolated events. Marketing is no longer just promotion. And public art is not a static installation. They're all connected and operate together as a coordinated regional cultural economic system. These attract visitors, as I mentioned, activates downtown spaces, and supports local businesses. So that's more of the regional and seasonal strategy to why I'm doing this work. Do you have any questions?
No, are you so, okay, are you all set?
Yeah. I think I said it all.
No, thank you for that summary. I think it's important before we go to the group and to the public that may have questions that people understand that there was a subcommittee of the council a number of years ago that I was a part of that did the look, listen, and field tour around Franklin, which we heard loud and clear from the art community, from the downtown leaders, from Dean College representatives, from, we had poets, we had visual artists, we had dancers, we had seniors to kids, all saying the messaging was kind of all over the place. The groups didn't have a leader to help take them forward, and could we invest the money in having somebody that would sort of shepherd this dream, because we know Franklin has a lot of artists, Franklin has a cultural district, we have a very active cultural council, and that morphed into the job description and the council allocating the funds, and here you are. And you have done a fantastic job. You are anybody that gets to know you or work with you knows you're a breath of fresh air, that you are a ton of energy and knowledge and also a great spirit. And all of the nonprofits that I know you work closely with all say the same. So I'm not just preaching up here. Like, they all tell me how valuable you are, how much a difference you've made, and the dollar value to what they've seen, right? What we, maybe now with a couple of years under your belt, we'd like to see maybe the cultural festival come back, or a couple of other, sort of like bigger scale events that would continue to add to that economic piece that you're driving, right? With really using the arts to connect food trucks, connect performances, help the hotels, help the restaurants, help the Black Box, and et cetera, the various downtown businesses. So, just keep that in mind in your portfolio. And I'll certainly yield to questions from the other counselors, but thank you, Corey.
Sure, thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have some of the other questions, but I have some new questions too. How's your workload and the utilization of your department changed since you started as our director?
That's a great question. I would say I'm hitting that point of starting all my emails with apologies for not answering people sooner, which is kind of a blessing and a curse in the fact that if I could have my dream scenario, it would be to have like 5 other people I'm working with doing all of this work. But what I appreciate about the Franklin community is that we can be ourselves with one another, and they give me grace to answer the emails, and I appreciate that. But I would say when I first started, it was really about investing in the community and learning the community. I wasn't going to come in here and become like a cultural dictator and be like, you have to change everything you're doing, just because that doesn't build authentic community relationships. And I would never tell Roberta or Pandora what to do. If you all wouldn't either.
No one does.
But it was important to me to understand the culture to which I was walking into, and a big aspect of that for me is making sure the community itself understands that the culture to which we're celebrating is our community. It's not this kind of like stick up the butt type of energy, in the sense that it's like we want to celebrate what we care about. We want to celebrate the moments that are near and dear to our hearts. We want to see our community members walking down the street in the parade. We want to see their artwork up on the walls at the coffee shop that we go to every day. Like, so those experiences are really what matter, and that's really what my workflow, the deep underlining workflow, is really dedicated to.
And to be clear, I guess I was looking through some of the notes, and you're asking for an additional 500. That's a restored cut. Half of a restored cut for marketing expenses. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. I organized my notes in preparation of like, what will they ask me? So yes, I'm asking for $5,000 return to the marketing budget, just because, as I was describing earlier, marketing is the vehicle to which to send out the message that we're here and what we're doing. And part of that I found is the cultural tourism study. Oh, wait, that's not what I want. The cultural, sorry, hold on one sec. Too many notes here. Okay. Is that I found that there is a direct correlation in the most recent Aretha Franklin. So the analytics that I received from our marketing data showed that their increase in foot traffic correlated with the actual presence of people downtown. And that to me just felt like such a tangible metric that we could bring and then apply that to future grant opportunities and be able to have measurable data, because culture can feel abstract. It can be a lot of different things, and that's where, when we're trying to put dollar amounts to it, it's so important to have tangible data. So that's where I'm seeking that funding to basically be able to back it up and say, we have all these other extra reports and tools and systems in place, opposed to just organically me going through, the Instagram analytics, getting that information. I would love to have that tool set to generate this data and metrics at my fingertips, so then I can use it in a more, in a stronger way.
So you just talked about the metrics, so I have a challenge for you. If you have 100 additional regional visitors that attend Franklin through marketing, how much money will they bring back to the town?
Well, in case studies, it says probably if we have like an extra extra 100 visitors, they would bring at least 2,500 to 7,500, and that's just based off of like one night. And that is relates to the Aretha Franklin data that I probably shared with you before. Thanks, Max, for teeing me up there. But what's important too is to understand that it's all connected, and that marketing is to build those systems and get those metrics, but it also ties into being able to present the programming in a way that's visibly cohesive. It sets the tone of like, oh, they understand the vibe. It visually stimulates and separates from the other kind of clutter that's on social media when it looks crisp and good. So that's also ties into it as well.
And what grants have you been able to secure, and what share of your budget of your budget does your department represent?
Do you mean overall?
In the whole budget, yeah.
So
what
my
share is your
budget, my amazing budget, my budget is 0.079% of the town budget. And then, as I mentioned, I am the department of one, but we are mighty, we meaning me.
And my final question is...
Oh wait, can I tell you about the grants?
Yeah, go about the grants.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Wait, I got more intel.
Need the grants.
So since I've been here, I started in February of 2024, and I have applied to 18 grants. And I generated a grant report in March, and since then I've applied to a few more, but the information I'm sharing directly reflects from March. So let's see. So out of the 18 grants that I've applied to, I've won 8 of those grants, and I have asked for over $300,000 outside of funding, of external funding, to bring into Franklin. And to date, I've received $168,775. And that also doesn't include the $50,000 public earmark or the recent $120,000 grant we received from the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism that we got in partnership with our upcoming watch parties. Woo! 24th and 25th, get ready. So anyways, so altogether, including that $50K, that's $218,775 that brought back into the fold.
And finally, one of the things is that this council's been concerned about is the aspect of trust between the town and the public. Can you talk a little bit about, do you think your department builds trust and goodwill between the town and community through its activity?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's the baseline of what this is all about. I was mentioning earlier, it's really about building that authentic community partnerships. And I don't even mean that for just like organizations collaborating. It's being able to be in a space where you can go up to your neighbor and stand next to them at the farmer's market and buy vegetables and not think about all the mean things you're saying to each other on Facebook. You know? It's about really generating those gray spaces to be actual community members together. And I think I'm newer to the municipal workflow. Prior to this, I was working at nonprofits and stepping into a space where I was like, 2 failed overrides, yikes, what's this all about? And seeing how that fracture in the community, and it really makes this work that much more important. And as community organizers and leaders, it's really what the core of what we're all doing here is trying to problem solve and work beside one another. So, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time answering all our questions, and I'll
Thanks,
yield the
Max.
floor.
Thank you. Any other councilors?
No.
Nobody else? It looks like you're off the hook, kid.
Thanks. I like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
Thanks, Corey. All right, why don't we do the non-excluded, excluded? Steve held that one.
I did, and I wonder if Kerry could help us through this one a little bit. We had a little email exchange the other day. I just noticed that the budget amounts have gone down significantly for interest payments, and we had an email back and forth, and I wonder if you could just explain that to everybody, because I think that's good news, right?
Yep, it is very good news. So some of this was in the finance, was in the budget narrative under debt and interest. But a couple of the two things that stood out is the Horace Mann schools. Those were debt exclusions, which means that the property taxes went up for that period of time, and now they are being paid in full. So that also brings down our debt and interest payments in the budget for that. The other things that we have a few general that weren't debt exclusions that are also coming off. And they were small amounts, but they are in fiscal year 28 and 29 and 30. We have the DPW garage, the senior center, the fire station, and some other school buildings that we worked on. They'll be dropping off. There'll be another reduction, but Tri-County is now on. So
Is that offset?
Tri-County's large.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking to borrow, so I'm just focused on, what's here, so.
Yes.
Prospectively, we're still looking at kind of what we've been used to in terms of overall interest payments?
Sorry, I can't see and do that all at the same time. Let's see. So there is some reduction, quite a bit, over the next few years, almost, a couple $100,000. In general fund, not debt, not the debt exclusions.
Right.
But in that topic, yes. you're
Okay,
correct.
good,
Yep.
good to know.
And I think I did provide, not just to you, in the narrative, 5 years out.
Right.
And if anybody needs that, I can certainly do it again. But that's something we constantly look at. And-
No, I just wanted to highlight it, just given the context of
Yes.
everything we're talking about, so
Right.
thank you for
So
that.
while we're on that topic, I don't have my sheet in front of me, but
You read my
can do it
mind.
if you want.
The interest rate?
Yes,
Why don't you announce it?
okay.
Just the rate, I think they'll just care about the rate
Oh,
for right now.
So the fire truck, right, you guys, we did the borrowing against the note, and I appreciate all your support with that. And the interest rate was 3.15. I estimated 3.5. So we have a debt payment, interest payment of 29,000,
Correct.
which is in here as 32,000, so Evan will make that reduction. But that, we should get the funds for that June 1st.
Great.
So, and next year we'll be talking, because we have to decide if we're going to pay that off with cash, if we have that. I say cash, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Or do we do a larger borrowing, and I put that in there? Because
Okay.
remember the issuance costs I spoke
Yeah.
about, it's better to build that into the larger borrowing.
Yep,
Yep.
it's good news, though.
Yes, it is, thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We didn't actually, we're going over the expenses side, but I had a question about the revenue side. I don't need it now, but I was wondering if you can get in the assessment section, how GATRA is calculated for the assessments, because that's actually not in the expenses, that's in the revenue sheet, I think, so. It's considered a state assessment.
I was just say, I think it's part of the cherry sheets.
Okay,
Yeah. We can have Evan look at the numbers of, you want the history?
I just want to know if, in terms of a fixed bus route, if, how they calculate that route, that number, so we know whether it's actually going to increase the budget or not, or hurt the budget or not to do that. So, thank you.
I can, sure.
And just want to mention that the key point of this is the AAA bond rating. I mean, you're getting a 3.15% interest rate because of that AAA bond rating. I mean, I hope I don't need to,
but
explain that
thank
too
you.
further, but I think as we were seeing the 3.15, that's an exceptionally good interest rate right now in the marketplace. So if there is considering for borrowing, making sure that we do go out to borrow, we will have to have the fiscal conditions good, because we will go through a ratings analysis. So if we go out to borrow, we're obviously going to have to go to S&P, and they're going to do a fresh rating. As we heard last week, the town of Wakefield got downgraded when they went out to borrow this year because they took money out of their OPEB trust. So Kerry, at the request of many of you, added in a list of the stabilization funds. Those stabilization funds are all reviewed by our ratings agency. So when you have stable reserves, particularly what I call the Dust Bowl account, which is the general stabilization account, that is not actually ever to be used. That is literally there for like rationing in a Great Depression, like a severe economic downturn. The budget stabilization is there for a rainy day fund to patch the budget gap. A key part of the rating was over the last several years, was in 2020, we had $0 in the budget stabilization fund. And, give certainly Councilor Dorco and Councilor Cormier-Ledger a lot of credit over the years of trying to build that up. I would note in there that there's $3.5 million in the rainy day, but $500,000 of that was because we put the money into a high yield savings account. So we've invested the public's money very, very well. And so all of those accounts are generating very good returns. That's a very good positive. So we want to try to avoid any dipping into any of those funds as possible, so that if you do consider going out to borrow, we can try to still get that 3.15% rate, or hopefully if the Fed reacts over the next year, maybe those rates will go down under 3. So it's just something for everybody to keep in mind as we go forward with the strategy of how to deal with all these financial issues.
And that's why what you have in front of you is, I go back to 24, 25,
Yeah.
and you can see how the interest is just building
Yeah.
on those funds. So,
Thank you for putting that together.
Anybody else? Thanks, Kenny, that was nice.
sure.
Okay. Police is next, and then DPW. Hi, Chief.
Mr. Chairman, for anybody that doesn't know, this is Deputy Chief James West, and this is Laura Graver, who's our business manager.
So, just give us a breakdown, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want, kid?
Level service +2. Yeah, I mean, all right, so the budget, the budget is
Your
level
budget
service
a little bit,
+2.
yeah.
So it's any, level service being that primarily it's just a collective bargaining agreement. And this is year 2 of a 3-year collective bargaining agreement, which we do have with the sergeants, and we're still working on for the patrol officers. And then the +2 being that
Yes.
at the end of fiscal year '25, we were at 58, and we started fiscal year '26, where we had to cut over $200,000 from the budget to reduce our number of sworn from 58 to 56, and then had to make, we had to keep patrol at 35 patrol officers. And to do that, we had to transfer 2 of the community service officers from the community service unit to fill those 2 open spots that were made when we lost the 2 in patrol. So now we only have the 2 community service officers / school resource officers. So if we were to get the +2 back, and we're able to restore those 2 positions, then we would end up putting David Gove and Amanda Ayer back into their positions within the community service unit, and then, bringing us back to the 4 school resource officers that we enjoyed for so many years.
Mike?
Question was asked last night to the fire if, where we talked about recurring kind of budget expenses, how much would you need if we were to roll some of that small recurring capital stuff into the budget, fire?
So I'm assuming you definitely, stuff that we typically get out of capital.
Yeah, out of capital, like
The
the
largest item is the cruisers.
Right.
And they're typically, we end up asking, from 4 to 6. This year was light, as we said before. As far as the other ones, the smaller items would be the lease for the tasers.
Yeah.
Minor technology, being, computers, desktops, stuff like that. And then the body armor So body armor being the soft body armor that officers wear,
Yep.
it's got a 5-year lifespan. It's warranty for 5 years to basically stop bullets. And after that, they don't warrant it anymore. So we turn it over every 5 years. It's actually in the collective bargaining agreement as well. Something I got into the collective bargaining agreement as the president back in 1998. That changes because not everybody's on the same cycle. And a Taser lease is $70,000. So you're probably talking somewhere in the vicinity of 110.
Okay.
About $110,000 would probably take those 3 items off. The only thing left would be the cruisers.
Okay, perfect. We were at a council thing this morning, and there was I was talking to one of the school committee members, and they were mentioning about the traffic at Lincoln Street. At Lincoln Street.
Lincoln?
Yeah. So the question I had was, and not necessarily looking for the answer tonight, but just wanted to bring it up tonight because we're talking about the budget, is if we were to provide some level of police detail regularly there, what would it cost to do that on a daily basis? Don't know what the answer, don't expect you to answer that tonight because it's a curveball, but I would be, just like I asked the schools last night, if I gave you $300,000 and you could find a way to give it back to the community, what would it cost for me to say, we'll provide 4 hours of police detail every day, so traffic moves on Lincoln Street, yada, yada, yada. How would that impact the budget to do something like that?
So the collective bargaining agreement, basically
Yeah.
it's a 4-hour minimum. So if they're out there for 15 minutes
Yeah.
or 3 hours, 3 hours and 59 minutes,
Yeah.
it's 4 hours. 4
Okay.
hours and 10 minutes, it's an automatic 8.
Okay?
So you're looking
So
at
there'd be 4 hours. What's 4?
$300. 300 plus the 10% fee that goes to the town for the administrative.
Okay. Okay, so $300 per 4-hour increment.
That's correct.
Okay. So if I did that, okay, I gotta do the math, whatever the math is. 180 times 300 is about $75,000 roughly, if I did that quick. Okay? That answers my question. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
We get
Very
some
well.
vacations too, though. You
Yeah,
got
yeah.
vacations in there, Mike.
Yep,
Even if it was on.
Mike, can I ask a question?
yes.
Chief, that 4-hour minimum, is that 4 contiguous hours? Or are you saying 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night, Mike, for the detail?
I'm saying it could be I guess, yes, because yes, it has to be both morning
Then
and
it's,
night, yes.
then it's 600.
Okay,
Then it's,
Because it's not a 2 hours and then 4 hours in between.
45 minutes
and then-
here and 12 minutes here.
No,
right?
it's a
So
4-hour.
It would be 4-hour minimum in
It's
the
a
morning.
4-hour minimum.
it would be 8 hours a day.
That is correct.
It would be-
Might as well hire an officer and just stick them up there.
Can we just make it can we use an SRO?
Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just have my standard 3 questions I'm asking all the departments. How's the utilization of your department services by the public changed over the last 5 years? Do you have any specific metrics like calls, visits, cases, handles, units served, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, our numbers keep going up. Our call for service volume keeps going up. Our requests for traffic enforcement, continually rise. We're not seeing anything really go down. Thankfully, violent crime isn't going up, that type of thing. But I mean, just the mundane, regular day-to-day, the needs, especially with the mental health-related issues. COVID really did a number on everybody, and it's still there. Those things are still affecting people regularly. So the numbers keep going up. I don't anticipate them to go down. And if you looked in the budget narrative, we kind of threw out some of the more, the ones we're dealing with on a regular basis, and it'll show you the increases and what they are.
And, okay. The second question, if your budget is cut by 5% compared to level service, will your department still be able to function and meet all state requirements and professional accreditation standards? Would you not be able to operate properly or risk losing accreditation or certification?
So if, you'd have to take the current budget and then slash out the +2, which makes it like 7.6, which would then equate to about a $360,000 reduction. So when we lost over 200 last year, that cost 2 offices. So I wouldn't want to cut as many as 3, A lot of, basically, it'd have to be a lot of soul searching as to exactly what we're going to do. But you're looking at probably the elimination of the community, it could be the elimination of the community service unit, if we were to leave the community service unit, because we're going to have to move 2 people now back into patrol, because if we're going to lose at least 2. One of the things we may end up doing is moving the administrative patrol officer that works with the deputy, Richie Martini, who does a significant portion of his job is accreditation. And then, of course, the rest of the money would probably come from decimating our training. We would continue with our Kelly-related training, Kelly time, where we do the mandated that we'd have to do for the state, but there'd be no other training that would probably really go on. Advanced, in-service, things for veterans, and then some of the training that we do have to do to continue for those standards. So it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to be able to keep up our accreditation when we go for re-accreditation in 2 years.
So you think you might possibly lose it with a 5% cut?
It's a good, very good chance that we would.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the new spending in your department, would you still be able to function without that spending, new spending? Would you still be able to exist and,
Would exist, but the quality of the service we'd be able to provide would be reduced. I mean, we'd basically be reactive completely, and none of the things that we, some of the other things that we like to do. I mean, our community service unit is really the thing that's the most visible, that's out there, that keeps up with our, ability to keep close to our residents, other than the fact that we're pulling people over and, and so forth. So we lose that.
And in terms of, the 2 officers, would it add more revenue or be used for preventive maintenance to save more in the long run? Would it be a revenue adder in the long run?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, like I said, if we were to get the 2 officers back, the 2 positions, we're gonna increase back to where we were with the number of SROs that we would have in our community service unit, which would make it it would definitely make it significantly easier on the 2 remaining who are doing all the schools, in which they can't do other things like plan a Halloween party, that everyone would like to see us do, or be able to do the leadership camp down at Meadowlark, things like that were either eliminated or drastically reduced. They would all be reinstated, once we get, but we don't. You don't want your police department creating revenue.
Right.
I can tell you that right now. You don't. It doesn't work well.
Right.
It never does. Before the issue, if you want to go back and look at Ferguson, Missouri, their thing was about generating revenue through motor vehicle violation stops and parking tickets, and a lot of it came into the poor neighborhoods and so forth, and then once they had one little thing happen, it became a huge mess. And it's not something that we do. We don't charge people for a night at the Blue Lantern Inn for a reason. Otherwise, people would think that we're arresting people just so that we can raise revenue. And it just doesn't go well with our core mission, which is to be there for people, to help people when they need it.
And finally, I'll ask what I asked Ray Shea about the community service officers. Do you think your department, the community service program, builds trust and goodwill between the town and community through its activity?
Absolutely. It does it more than any. I mean, we're all in the business of trying to do that. It's why most of the time, if you have been pulled over by a Franklin police officer, they're probably going to talk to you about what you did and so forth. They're not really looking to give you a ticket. I prefer that they give warnings, as something in your glove box, so the next time when you reach in there and you see it, you're like, Jesus, I was going really fast again, going from A to B. That it's a reminder. We're really not trying, and the money goes to the state anyway. It's not a direct revenue source for the town. But our community service unit, that is their job. Their job is to look after, mostly our most vulnerable residents, being our children. They liaise regularly with the senior center. Special populations is typically what it is that they do. And that's their core function.
I will say, I do like the, if they see someone riding their helmet with a bicycle with a helmet, they'll give them a ticket for a free ice cream cone.
Yes, Chevy's over in Bellingham.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love ice cream, so that's. But,
Wear your helmet, I'll have them stock.
the tires.
I'll have them look for you, Max.
I don't know, I heard
Battalions.
I heard a request for wine before, and no ice cream vouchers.
Clearly, we're hungry people, that's
Yeah.
all it comes down to.
Oh, Jane had one too.
I have a question, but I just want to let you know what else helps build community? Is Chief Lynch joining the kickball game.
I'm still working on it. I'm working on it.
I'm gonna keep.
I told you, I'm talking to my wife tomorrow when we're taking our long drive to
I'm
Delaware.
just not gonna let you forget.
I heard there was a dunk tank, too.
Yeah, we're not going there. Same question that I asked fire, and I'll ask DPW too, is just for clarification for myself, is other pay. Because the ranges are from 15,000 to 38,000 that somebody might get in their other pay column. Is it the same as the other departments, like based on their degrees of education and that kind of, it's not has to do with like overtime or anything like that? It's just where they stand as far as their educational level and licenses, or?
It's the things in the collective bargaining agreement that are not just their salary, so it's night differential. So if you work evening shifts overnight, you get extra.
Okay.
Versus if you work the 6A to 4P shift. It's their educational incentive, and then any stipends that they have, and then they have a stipend for hazardous duty.
Okay. That was a simple, easy question. I just wanted to know, because I see it all the time, I just don't know what it was for.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, you had mentioned that you hadn't seen an increase in violent crime. What about nonviolent crime? What about, burglaries, car thefts, breaking and entering?
I mean, we occasionally have the stolen, a stolen car here and there, and more often than not, it's not the car being stolen, it's the cars being broken into. Not as many, home B&Es, but you'll get these rings that come around one time or another. For a number of years, they were coming up from, they were groups that were coming up from Connecticut, and then they would just drive around in the middle of the night. And as we've said 100 times, the number of broken windows that we have as they're trying to get into your car is 0. So when they're actually getting stuff and you're reporting that your car has been rifled through and that you're missing something, it's because you left the car unlocked. Lock your cars and nothing will happen. And so I know our social media guy loves to put that PSA out a couple times a year. But just lock your cars, lock your doors to your house. Yes, we live in a great community. We live in a community that's always in the, pretty much regularly in the top 10. Just don't make it easy for them. They'll just move on.
We had a couple of cars stolen in my neighborhood, and I thought that the way that they stole the cars was that they kind of repeated the signal for the, the automatic entry or whatever, but. that was me thinking
Professionals?
about it. But-
Yeah,
But
I
actually,
mean-
that wasn't the case. No, what the case was, they just left the keys in the car.
Yeah.
All
But
right,
no.
that's all I have, thank you.
Could you tell my daughters that, because they get hit once a year? They leave their cars open. Oh, my pocketbook's gone.
Are they taking cash and they're asking you for cash? Maybe you better look into that.
Steve?
I'm all set, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Ted?
Sure, yeah, thank you, Chief, and thank you for the great job that you guys do. For the benefit of the public and just everybody listening, you gave a great presentation on public safety a month or two ago, and you talked about looking back even 20 years ago, what staffing optimally should have been and how Franklin's grown, and compared some of your numbers to similar-sized towns. Can you give like the 30-second summary for everybody again tonight? Because I think it's important that they see, even with bringing these two people back, you're still way under where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, so when the town was growing tremendously back in, the mid-90s, we were the fastest growing town for 5 years in a row. And I got on in the middle of that, like 1996. It's just, we've always been behind. It's been like catch-up to try to get our numbers as the town continued to grow, to have the police department grow with it. Then you get some downturns, and we had layoffs. And then, when I became the chief in 2016, we were at 46. And in 2016, the numbers were probably about the same as they are now. You're looking at about, 33,000 residents in town. The FBI would say, it's 1.9 to 2.0 officers per 1,000. I'm not suggesting that we should have 70 cops, 70 police officers. But at 56 or even 58, we're still short where we should be. And we're always, if we're looking at a budget deficit or something like that, and we lose officers, that we could quickly end up going back to where we were. We don't want to be just reactive. We don't. But to be non-reactive and be able to do progressive things, and you know, you need the personnel to be able to do that. So yes, our biggest thing is traffic. That's what people want us to do. I would love to have a dedicated group of officers that's all they do, drive the motorcycles during the good weather, et cetera, and just do traffic, not tied to the radio. But to do that, and have a group like that, you need, 3, would be great. And as I said during that presentation, if someone was to say, okay, that, there's a pot of gold, I think that's George's, analogy. If there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and we were able to get it and we could have everything we needed, what would that cost? And I basically, I gave a description of the number of people we were looking at was more, 63, what they would do, et cetera. But, an analyst, having an individual that can do a crime analyst and maybe split their time in IT. We talked about IT, and I know that Tim and his people do a great job, but the turnover is pretty, heavy. They're doing both the schools and the town. And we have a lot of technology. We'd love to have more technology, but we're a little hesitant to even go with it, number one, for the cost, and number two, for it to be able to be serviced if we need it. One of the reasons wasn't brought up, but I'm sure people wondered, do we have body cameras? The answer is no. And we don't have body cameras because of the cost. Now, they'll give us the cameras for almost nothing, but the cost is related to the storage for all that video. And then you're going to need to hire somebody to be able to manage it from all the public records requests, not just from the DA's office or from, defense attorneys, but just people who just, our public records law is very open. You can almost get anything. And you need somebody to be able to manage all that. And it's those costs and the fact that it's IT intensive that we don't do it. But the number was about $800,000 to $900,000, but there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And maybe at some point, and if we can chip away at it. Like I said, we were 46 10 years ago. We were at 58 at one point, hoping to get to 58 again for the start of fiscal 27. We added 12 officers over 10 years. That's a great accomplishment that we were able to do with the support of the town and of the council and Jamie. So we're not in a rush. We'll get there at some point.
Thank you. I think it's important for the public to understand that as we talk about departments that have suffered cuts, departments that have lost staff, departments that have had to make tough choices, it's fallen on you guys too over the years, right? Like, you have been able to maintain a great force, keep Franklin safe. You've achieved incredible accreditations, right, that many police departments don't have. We're envied from everything that I've read and heard of, surrounding towns. Police officers want to come here because of the training and because of the leadership. And I think that speaks volumes to you guys. And the community needs to know that this isn't an area where there's surplus. This is an area where we have intentionally been trying to give you what we can every year, not just the past few councils, but going back 20 years, right? We've intentionally been chipping away at trying to build something that we can be proud of with the fire department as well, and with you guys. And we just have to keep working at it. And, thank you for all that you guys do, and thank you for the frontline men and women that put their lives at risk every day for us. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Chief. You guys do a great job. I always said it. It could be a revenue thing. If my cousin was alive, he was a Boston police officer, and he held the record of giving out 235 tickets in an 8-hour shift. So, yeah, his name was Mario Rampino, yeah. He loved April 2nd because that's when you had to have your studded snow tires Oh, he hit everybody up. Oh, my God. He gave me a ticket for not having my studded snow tires on. His own cousin. Of course he did. Yeah, he did.
And you say he's passed away, huh?
What a guy.
You ask any Boston police officer, they'll tell you, oh yeah, if we had 20 of them, we could get raises all they want. He goes, but no, you do a good job, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
DPW.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm joined by Kathy Moore. I think you know she's the office administrator and pretty much runs the everything numbers down.
Yeah.
We got a lot of them.
Do you want to give us the brief overview?
Give us a little overview.
So we pretty much do everything.
I agree with you, brother.
In town. It'd be hard for us to come up with something that we're really not doing in town. I mean, we have, obviously I work with a lot of my peers out here and their organizations, whether it's, you know, you heard about recreation, you know, we take care of all the fields and do all that. You know, the senior center, we're always, you know, doing stuff there for them. There's pretty much not any group in town that we're not touching one way or the other. So, but I mean, the big thing I think everybody knows is we take care, obviously, the roads, we take care of the parks, street lighting, water, sewer, stormwater, the recycling center, trash pickup, and then obviously administration. One thing you gotta remember is that, you know, I hear different department heads talking about, you know, generating money. Well, yeah, I collect probably over $20 million a year that we have to collect from everybody and then redistribute it out there. And then the other thing about bringing money into the town, we work very closely with the planning board and ZBA. So we might not get, we get specific, you know, from some of like large developments that are coming in, even the apartment complex or condos, you know, just for the water service alone, you know, it's $2,600 per unit. So we can collect, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars off the stuff that goes back into the infrastructure system. We work very hard on doing that. And then we do some other intangible stuff that, you know, talk about traffic and stuff like that. We, you know, work with the planning board and, you know, we'll do road improvements out there, intersection repairs, stuff like that to, you know, improve the traffic patterns. I think everybody always knows we talk about doing traffic studies. So we'll do that and see how it's going to impact the residents of town. Because I think we all know traffic has gotten a lot worse in this town the 20 years I've been here. It's not a little country little town anymore. We're pretty busy. But we're always on top of that, and, you know, Mike Maglio and his team, the town engineer, does a great job with that. So I think that's pretty much
That's an overview. Mike?
Nothing yet, but I'll just read my notes. You can go to Max.
Matt?
I have 3 standard questions and a few new ones. Question 1, how does utilization of your department services by the public, how have they changed over the last 5 years? Do you have specific metrics as to how they have changed?
So it's a very good question, and the one thing I think, once again, a little different than Public Works and other ones, is that I am, and if we're, you know, we're just talking money per se, it's very hard to budget what we do because everything's so volatile. We're you know, not 60% of my budget is expenses. So I don't have to sit here and tell you that, gee, you know, recently, gas prices have gone up, petroleum products have gone up. And everybody thinks, like, right off the bat, gee, that's just, you know, because we take care of all the gas for all the vehicles in town, but it's so much more than that. We're looking at, you know, we get to estimate fertilizer for next year. That's all made by urea, which is all petroleum-based products. So, you know, that stuff's going to start affecting us in the fall, what we're going to be able to do with that. And, I mean, that's just kind of like one example of everything goes up and down. No, actually, most of the stuff doesn't really go down, but the costs have gone up, and it's hard. You know, we're all working inside with a 2.5%, but a lot of things go up, just inflation, not so much last year, but the 2 years before that. You know, we were looking at 12%, and we're buying so many different commodities that it really affects our budget. And that has to, we have to make tough choices at the end of the year about what we can actually do and what we can't do. I give Kathy a lot of credit. I think I CC'd you on an email where we spent down to $68 last year. $68, that's all we had, that's all we turned back for free cash. I mean, on one hand, people will say, gee, that's really good, it's great accounting on her thing, we didn't go over. On the other hand, it's like, gee, you couldn't have saved money?
Right, that's what.
That's what most people are gonna say, but the other thing, we did save money, and we really balanced up, because look at how much, what's my biggest nightmare, is coming to you folks in May and June and say, gee, I haven't went my budget. And you gotta figure out this year and this year's money to do that, so it's a very challenging thing that we all do, and it's all different departments, you know, we have a little more flexibility with, you know, water and sewer, and that's just a fact. We have a lot of reserves in that, but I don't have reserves in the general fund. I don't have reserves in the recycling center. So, I mean, it's difficult at times to do that.
So you're saying that expenses have gone up, but have people been, you know, using the fields more? Have people been wearing the roads more? Have people been, you know, is there more demand for DPW services in addition to your expenses?
Yes, and I think, and I've expressed this a lot before, it's that a lot of stuff like the police or the fire, they're instantaneous. You know, if they lose their third ambulance or something like that, you're gonna see right after this delay of picking somebody up, right? What's the worst case scenario for me? Oh, gee, I got less staff, I got less people, the pothole doesn't get fixed as quick. The field's not as maintained, it's not a life and death thing, but the overall services of what we do, you know, gets delayed, and it has been. I can tell you 5 years ago, you know, the town was a lot different thing, and we were planning, you know, we still have all the plans to do water line improvement, road improvements, road reconstruction. The town just doesn't have the money anymore. And we still have those plans, but it's about trying to hang on to what we're doing instead of the foresight. I mean, we haven't, like I told you in the presentation before, we haven't put a water pipe in the ground, you know, contracted out. We've been doing them internally, okay? And we'll be able to do Pine Street this year, you know, leftover revenue. But we're not putting water mains in town. You know, you used to drive around this town, you couldn't drive anywhere. People called and screamed at us because we had so many roads closed, and, you know, we're doing all the detours and the intersections. We don't have that anymore. So that's one of the really big things that's changed, is that we're just not doing that outside work anymore.
And is it the utilization or the fact that we're just not investing more in it? Or as much as we have?
It's the investment that we're not getting there. But like in all fairness with the you know, I bring up the water line work. The council, you know, we got this thing called PFAS, my boss's favorite, right? And we're doing, you know, plan upgrades on that. You know, so, and that's, you know, $6 million, right? You know, that's, so we could have done road work. Because we only have so much money, and you all know, you just can't keep raising rates to do these things. But overall, the infrastructure, you know, I think you all know, I matrix everything out at asset management for everything. Well, yeah, our roads, I can show you, they're getting worse. So when people call up and say the roads are getting worse, well, yeah, they are. You know, we were kind of like hanging on there for a while.
A little bit.
But now, you know, they're slowly going down, but the road conditions are going down and stuff like that. And you're gonna see more of that. And I thought the other one, when I was, you know, talking with Carlos, one of the things we're not doing, and I noticed last night I was driving home, a lot of line painting, you take that for granted, but like you know, we try to get all the crosswalks obviously for safety, but like I always say, our long lines, you know, the center lines and like that, you drive around town, they're not like they used to be, they're starting to fade. You know, it's like 4 or 5 years later, they're faded, you know, can be a safety issue. So that's the stuff that you kind of miss, people don't notice all the time. And then the other one big thing is the, you know, the tree work, we've got to cut back on the tree work. But that's one of the ones you get the first call about, oh my God, a tree fell, you know, I got no power. I mean, we don't run the power, but it's usually not a tree anyways, but it's always, people like trees, and, you know, we want to maintain them, but that's one of the other ones that's kind of good to cut back a little.
Okay, so, you know, the other question I've been asking some of the other departments, and I know your budget has been cut a lot already, but if your budget was cut by an additional 5% compared to level of service, would your department still be able to function? meet all state requirements and professional accreditation standards, would you not be able to operate or risk losing accreditation or certification?
Well, I'm glad you brought the point, because I mean, I get all numbers. You've already cut in my department 5% over the last 2 years. I mean, my department, any way you look at it, has been cut $800,000. And this is just on the general fund side of stuff. This is the enterprise fund. So we've already been cut. And we've already, like I just explained to you, we have slowed down. There isn't any accreditation that we fall under. We have to plan for certain things. I was thinking about that, as brought up before. One of the things I think I gave you that matrix, that we have to spend $26 million on sidewalk crossings, the ADA compatible. It's not like we have to do it tomorrow, but you have to have a plan in place, and it's supposed to be done by 2020, or 20 years from now. But we have a plan for that. But every one of those that we do, just one, and I'm not talking both sides, one side is around $2,000. You think of how many, we got 8,400 or something like that out there. It's just, there's a lot of them.
So to follow up on your question, you mentioned ADA compliance. And there's a lot of legal regulations, so you could be fined for that, correct? If you are cut, could you face repercussions for not following ADA?
The way the law is written, the way it's explained to me, is we have to plan for it. So we do have a plan to replace them all, and we do inspect a certain number every year, okay? So the liability, we're not there for that. But part of the plan is, we have the plan, but part of the plan is also financing. And we don't have the financing, so you can say, oh, I'm gonna replace 400 of these over the next 2 years, but if we don't have the financing, that doesn't happen. But as long as you're saying that the financing is available, and you can show that, then you're meeting those standards.
And tell me about, I guess, we're restoring some cuts in this proposed budget compared to when the 2024 override failed. Can you talk a little bit about some of those cuts and, just some of your thoughts? I know you mentioned safety as an issue, which I take seriously. But, is there anything about preventive maintenance or anything that would save on net in the long run?
Well, the big one was the roads, give restore some of the road. This is like, even though that's just for stuff that we do, like small stuff, like trench repair, I'm not talking about paving major roads that we get down there. The big one I always harp on is last year we got rid of the summer help, which is, it's so cheap. We're paying $17, $16.50, $17 tops for, to get somebody here and weed whack. I mean, you can't, our guys, just because of collective bargaining, the average, I'm not just talking salary, the benefits, everything else, we're looking at $80 an hour, maybe more than that, right, for employees. So having those folks here during the summer when our folks need to take vacation, because that's what they do, because they're here all winter long, right? It's nice to have those. That's just a very good expense, and that's short money. Once again, the trees, a lot of stuff that we're doing, if we don't do it now, and I've said it before, we still got to do it. It's going to cost more later down the road. The example I always say is like your hot water heater. Drain it every 2 years. If you don't, it's going to fail. Instead of just draining it, maybe spend $10, you're going to have to buy a new one for $1,000. So that's why we don't do the preventive maintenance and keep this stuff going, because we're going to pay now or pay later.
I had a few more questions about the summer help.
Yes.
If the summer help seasonal help isn't funded, will DPW have to use overtime to complete the same work, and how much would that cost? Or would it just not get done?
Well, some stuff has to get done, but yeah, we just cut back. And as of right now, we are doing summer help, so that's going to happen because it just makes sense to do it. So yeah, we're going to be doing summer help this year.
And okay, I think and if any of that work is deferred, specifically the summer help, is there anything with deferred maintenance with that where it would impact, or is it specifically things that are not that have that deferred maintenance?
We've had good summer help that we put on like patch crews and stuff like that because we've had some really talented young men and women that have worked for us that have done a good job. But most of the stuff, it is the mundane work. It's the weed whacking, it's the lawn mowing, it's stuff like, trash barrel pickup. You remember all that about not picking up the trash barrels. So yeah, that's pretty much the stuff that gets
okay, so it's not something that would save money down the road. It's just something that just needs to be done.
No, it would actually cost more money down the road.
It would cost more money down the road.
Because it gets deferred. Or people's expectations would have to get modified, and I think we all know how that goes. People don't like to do that. I think I can say very confidently when we think about the grounds and stuff like that, it's like, I'll put our fields up against anybody in the state.
I would too.
We've been recognized in New England just because how good they are. And I also think, you folks all know whatever it might be, we're at a level now that we're kind of really high. It's easy to maintain that level. It's when you're really low, all the investment and stuff that we've done over the years to get us to that level, that's expensive. But once you get there, it's easy to maintain. So if we start cutting back on that, and then we want to try to get back up down there later on down the road, it's going to cost more money.
Okay.
So,
It would add up down the road if we were to
Absolutely.
defer the summer help.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
You all set, Matt?
Yes.
Jane?
Just two questions. One is the same one I've been asking, is your other pay. What is your other pay based on for the DPW?
Similar to what everybody else has, it's a lot of stipends. We're very high stipend based. Like, for example, like our water treatment operators, they can get a D1, D2, and as they get they progress up because they're a higher license. There's pesticide license out there to get to, and the other deferred one would be, we have Tuesday to Saturday employees. So they get they make a little extra money because, an offset because they're working that Saturday, and they do that. I think that's most of them, right?
It's certified arborists.
Yeah, the certified arborist, stuff like
Yes.
that.
Okay.
So that's
Sewer
some,
licenses, so there's, in the contract, there's a long list.
Okay.
Education stipends, as they mentioned.
Hoisting licenses. And stuff.
yeah, hoisting, no, because that's required of their job.
Oh, it's required for this.
So when we have the licenses out there, some jobs are specific, like you have to have the specific licenses. But what I've tried to do is I've pretty much opened it up so any of my employees can get any of these licenses, because I think it's good for the organization. You could be in the water department and you might not be a water treatment plant operator, okay? But you could get your water distribution license, because that way they could always fill in. And it's good for our department, it's good for the education. In the long run, it's, it's really not that much money. Most of these stipends are around, $1,000, $1,500, so.
They're also paid, a lot of them are paid out of the water sewer enterprise fund, so they come out from the ratepayers.
Okay. The second question is you said that you're definitely gonna have the summer help this summer. The 279 was for restoration of things that were lost. The recommendation is to not restore and to move that into snow stabilization. So if we chose to move that to the snow stabilization, or just say we're not gonna do it, how are you gonna do the summer help?
I would move money around. Whether it's overtime, we could look at different things. And don't forget, some of the summer help also over half of the ones come from the water, sewer, and stormwater also. But it's just such a valuable thing, and we have to do it, and Jamie and I did talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's low money, usually, obviously, they're local hires. I think, we said this before, many times, but obviously because of the labor market, there are some new staff that funnel in for 8 months a year and a half, and then they get a job for $8 more an hour, and they're gonna go to another union shop or another organization or private sector. I think it was referenced last night a few times.
They come to me.
So, right, so,
They come to me.
so sometimes when you have that gap for 3 months, say, and filling somebody, there's a surplus of money. Traditionally, you send that back to free cash by the end of the year, but I think as you've seen with the budget cuts that have happened, we don't have as much bandwidth in there, but because the summer's coming up, we know there'll be vacancies that'll turn over at some point. I think, Brutus will be able to triage some of that. And, I also think the demand for summer help isn't quite as high as it used to be. These used to be jobs where it was pretty competitive, but I think, not all kids want to kind of go out and do labor, pick up trash, mowing lawns. It's usually the kids that want to be outside. And so, we'll try to triage it to the best, obviously the best of our ability to try to get some of it back. I know that there's been a lot of comments from current counselors, but also the public, to try to get some of those jobs back. Are we going to bring back summer help to the same level it was 5, 10 years ago? Absolutely not, right? Where, generally it was a fairly competitive, pretty competitive gig in town when I started here. We got a lot of applications, but we're gonna try to take them on an as-need basis, and as you hear, it's fairly efficient, and so hopefully we can get out there and do that.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey Bruce, how you doing?
Good, but
Just one question. So there's a proposed in here 6.6% increase. Obviously, you're going to be funded above what you were for 2025, making up the money that you lost last year. So you've been talking a lot about, and I think you explained some of this to Max, but some of the things that we've been missing. Are you going to be able to restore, what's your take on that as far as if we have this money, are we going to be able to restore some of the things that we've lost as far as road maintenance and just keeping up with some of the work that you need to do?
we are, and and like I said, it's not always the pretty stuff, but it's like the crack ceiling, we got that, schedule coming up. We're gonna be doing some, hot play, some of that is capital, but a lot of it was going back into, and then chip sealing, everybody's favorite. But, it does work, I think you all know that, it's not the most pleasant thing, but yeah, so we are gonna be restoring that, and then obviously the barrels and stuff like that, we have the more of the kids back. At this time, we went through the big, people were upset, obviously, about that. But I think, what happened was, and we didn't take every barrel out, I really said it, we basically just moved them closer to the fence line. There's not really a park that doesn't have a barrel, because people's gonna throw their trash out anyways, and it takes longer to pick it up. So you kind of give them something. But, yeah, so we're gonna keep it there, and that way keep that efficiency going, and, once that kerfuffle went over, it's been fine. And I think that everybody out there still knows we're picking up and cleaning up, and which is a pretty basic DPW thing. So, yeah, we're trying to restore it. I can't expand stuff, which we'd like to, but, yeah, the biggest thing on there is the stuff that, like I said, the road improvement stuff, and then the tree work that we're gonna, keep doing.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
Mike, I skipped you.
Yeah, I guess I just want to, because Brutus, you said that the summer help, you're going to find a way to do the summer help, and you budgeted for it. I just don't want everyone to think, well, it's going to happen anyway, so let's cut the budget by the 41,000. So no matter what, I'm still going to fund you the 41,000, because if you were going to make it work, that meant 41,000 had to come from someplace else. So I just don't want people to think, even the counselors say, I don't have to fund it, and I'm still going to get it.
Yes.
So sometimes my words of wisdom is sometimes you have to be careful how you word it,
Yes.
because that's how people will interpret it. So, but either way, I will still support adding the $41,000 specifically for that, because if you were to make it work, it wouldn't work.
Thank you.
And the other thing is, and I couldn't find it in my notes, did the finance committee recommend a reduction of their expenses?
I don't believe so.
There wasn't?
It was facilities.
It was facilities?
Yeah, they reduced
Okay.
it 75,000 on the water irrigation,
Okay, so it was facilities, it wasn't DPW, okay, just wanted to clarify that, okay. Then now I'll ask that question, the facilities then.
I agree totally with you, too.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
I'm good. I went through the numbers a bunch of times. I had some initial thoughts on where I thought you might be able to cut, but I looked at it over and over. I think it's reasonable considering what you do and what things cost, so I'm fine with it. My only kind of question is around non-scheduled overtime, and this will come up with the facilities group too. Your numbers by your groups are not so bad overall, but with snow and ice, you don't have dedicated people for snow and ice, right? So,
What do you mean dedicated?
well, you have non-scheduled overtime of $250,000 for snow and ice.
Correct.
But you don't have a salary line for snow and ice. There's not like 10 snow and ice guys
No.
waiting for the snow. They get paid when it snows and they
On
do
one
what
hand,
they
I'll
do.
say, in Public Works, everybody
Right.
gets snow and ice.
Right.
But there are priorities, like the highway department, they're the ones that technically, they're the first out, to treat the roads.
Right. I just wanted to make
Okay.
sure I was reading all that right, so And that number, maybe we have a good year next year, we don't have to spend as much as we did this year.
We had really 2 good years. We
Yeah.
had nothing.
Right.
And this year, 3 years.
So it's possible, even though that's built into the budget, and you move money around for one thing or another or whatever, but there's a chance maybe if we have a good winter, we don't spend as much.
Correct, and it's, and that's, even, I redid the averages, even with this year, that's still pretty much the running average, 1.4 million over the last, 5 years.
Right. Materials I get, supplies or whatever, my question was more on the labor and what kind of, we don't know, God knows what the future is in terms of weather for next year, but.
And I will throw a little love to the crew out there. Don't forget, we got 58 inches of snow in 2 weeks. Yeah. And it doesn't just stop in one day. It's like, we just started cleaning up, and we just got everything pushed back, and I'll start again. So that's the labor, it just goes on. It's not just what people see in the storm.
No, I get it. So, I'm good.
Thank you.
otherwise.
All right, most of my questions have actually already been asked. But I was surprised that snow and ice was the only line item that you didn't increase the budget. I mean, we heard a lot about how bad the winter was and how we were depleted. So I was surprised to see that you had some fairly high percentage increases for other lines and 0 for that one. So I know you just said now that 1.4 seems to be the average. You are confident that not increasing that still leaves us fairly safe for this winter? Is that?
Counselor, I am never confident.
Okay,
in
well,
snow.
fair.
But I can only go by how we try to budget everything, and Jamie and I have been working on these budgets for a long time.
I'll just add in, I think I mentioned this probably in February when I released the budget. Some of those lines, I think, are the restorative issues that have been discussed around trees, crosswalk paintings and stuff like that. But I had suggested when the snow was coming that the final budget, revised budget, will actually show most of those restorations will not traditionally go to where it was proposed. That money, I think I mentioned this, I hope everybody remembers, I did mention this in February or March. In the final budget you'll get in another week and a half, a lot of the restoration money that was proposed is actually going to be in my revised budget in the snow and ice budget for exactly the reason of what happened last year. You'll also have a resolution on your June 17th meeting when we do the year-end transfers that you'll be voting on all of the money out of the snow and ice stabilization fund to pay for the bills that this year. So just to be clear, I did mention that a while ago. I understand it's not in the budget that's here now because it's not in the revision, but so a lot of the stuff that's been talked about for restoring is actually going to be proposed to go in the snow and ice budget to make sure we protect it for next year, as well as trying, if we hopefully have a good year, and we don't have to go over budget, any excess by our policy that's in snow and ice would not go to free cash, would go to replenish the snow and ice stabilization fund. So, I think when you see the numbers in another week and a half, those numbers in percentage increases will be.
And I appreciate that, the idea of moving any leftover from snow and ice back to snow and ice. I think that
Absolutely.
seems smart and safe, so I
never
appreciate
know.
that. I wanted to ask you, you said over the last couple of years, your budget's been cut $800,000. Where? Like, when was that? I'm looking at the budgets from the last, you did have 1 year where the budget was cut by almost 10%, which is huge, but you're also up, almost 50% since FY '23.
Yeah.
And so that, I guess, this is just for my own edification, trying to figure out what you meant by that.
Well, some of the stuff, there's so much paperwork here.
Okay.
Some of it's what's recommended, what's ultimately approved when those numbers go through. I have the same, the budget I'm proposing this year is the same budget from 2004. It's off by what, 18,000?
76.
Or 76,000, it's only gone up. And yeah, I think you know after the last 3 years, a lot of stuff have gone up. And I did some statistics, over the last 10 years.
Well, I just had the last 5 years here, so I could be wrong. I know you just said the last couple of years, and I was just looking at FY '23, the expended was $4,064,000, and then this year the requested was 6,085,000. So I was looking at the differences there, and maybe what you meant was the budget that was requested versus the
Right, it
budget
gets
that was
confusing,
given.
because our requested
is the
budget
amount.
was cut by 463,000 last year. The recommended FinCom and PA's budget, so it gets very confusing. And then you can also add in fiscal 20, this gets complicated, but in fiscal 25, we received a one-time line item transfer from the fire department to take over all the maintenance of the fire department vehicles. And so when you're trying to compare apples to apples, you'd have to take that out or add it back into previous budgets to compare correctly. So when you do that, it shows an even further disparity between like fiscal 24 and 27, but we've kind of just stopped talking about it because it gets too complicated. But there's another 160,000 that you add to the mix.
And it's still part of the same overall budget, but just been moved into our department.
But also, there's a list that was on the override site from last year. We had an itemized list by line item of exactly what got cut for at least last year. And then I know it gets confusing the year before because of that long marathon budget meeting and till 1 in the morning,
Right, and then
whatever.
there's two different.
Right, there was two, that's where it gets confusing. But the 400,000 last year was traffic light and repair and maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, guardrail installation cuts, road construction and maintenance, gravel, concrete, stone, brick. I mean, there's a whole itemized list. I'm happy to send it around to the council. So at least you have the itemized list from last year, and that's half of, I think, what Bruce is referencing. And then I think they're speaking to the stuff in FY '25 and '24, I believe, so.
Okay, so thank you. I guess the answer is what was requested versus what was granted as opposed to like actual dollars from year to year. Okay, thank you. And then you have seasonal staff in almost every department. The ones that were cut last year, was that just parks or was there other seasonal staff that was?
That was everybody, so it was the
everybody.
water, sewer, and we have a couple of stormwater also.
Okay, so then who we're planning to bring back is not 61,000, but 200,000 something worth of dollars, right? I mean, I would just added up the seasonal staff salaries
Yes,
that are
because the other ones
projected for
would be
this year.
in the other divisions.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, so slightly different number.
That line
than-
item also is an inspector, so that's not just necessarily
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
only summer help. So there are, in the
Okay.
water department, there's an inspector that.
In the, what's listed
In the
as seasonal
seasonal
staff?
staff,
Okay,
yeah, so there's a
thank you.
couple other positions,
That's a
but
good-
mostly the summer help,
No, that's a good point. Like when we're doing our water line work or sewer work, we hire someone to just stand,
seasonal person.
take care of it, but they're seasonal and full-time employee.
That makes sense, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Hey, how are you?
You know, I'm a big champion of yours, Brutus, and I'm constantly trying to find money to,
You have that.
you know, talk about roads and sidewalks. I get made fun of for it all the time. And I look back at the last 5 years now that I've been on the council, and every year, you're the easy target, right? Every year, we're like, okay, I guess we gotta chip away at DPW because there's no place else to go. We're bleeding everywhere, but we can go from the, you know, the not sexy stuff, right? And you've bared that burden. If I had $150 million right now, I'd give it to you. Because the pot of gold analogy, because that's how far behind we are in just getting caught up on the infrastructure lists that you guys maintain that get neglected and neglected and neglected and kicked down the road. Eventually, we're going to have a rude awakening on our hands at some point because these systems are going to fail, or we're going to have a major problem on our roads or with our sewers or with our water lines, and the money isn't going to be there. And you've made this point to us a million times. If you're not putting the money in now, it's going to cost you more later. So I appreciate, this is more of a statement than a question, but I appreciate everything that you guys do, and I appreciate that you have taken those cuts and cuts and cuts and still tried to make it work as best you can. And the service level to the community, yes, it's dipped, but for the most part, people are still able to navigate town safely. Obviously, I'd love to see us chip away at our sidewalk issue a little bit more, right? If we can
Sure.
find the money in some of our older neighborhoods, right? So people can go out and walk and enjoy the sidewalks more and not have to step out onto the street, but I get that it's expensive. So just keep up the good work. And whenever the magical money appears,
You got it.
I don't know, I want to throw it to the schools and to police and fire also, but you're definitely at the top of the list. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you know, Brutus, that I told you it was gonna be a bad winter because it was gonna be my last one. So I told you, I said, get prepared. So, and it was. But, you know, a lot of people don't realize everything goes up. I mean, just on my side, on the mechanical side, look at the parts, the increase in parts for the vehicles we got. And you're just talking, the increase in an oil filter is just incredible. You know, it's gone up 50% to 60%. I mean, it's crazy to see what the prices are. I look at some of the prices now, and it's just, I don't think $4,000 for a part is
You're talking,
no problem.
Jay, today, just a wiring harness?
Yeah.
$13,000.
$13,000, there you go, yeah.
We don't fix it, you ain't running the fire truck.
Yeah. It's just crazy. In the summer help, my son benefited from working 4 years with Carlos and you guys, and he's a great he's got a great job now, but he's also a great landscaper, you know, so he takes care of my yard. Matter of fact, he's coming home from Florida next week, and he said, get me some mulch, because I know you didn't do it. So I go, all right. So,
Well, you should have been paying us for the training
yeah, I
program.
know, you did a great job with them. And so I like to see kids get the training, because it helps them further down their line and then when they get married and they get their houses and stuff like that. So that kind of personal to my heart. But I know you do a great job, and I agree with Ted. If I had $150 million to give you, I'd give it to you right now. I'd sign the check right now. But, you know, I know you do the best you can. Any roads getting done at all this year?
Yeah, we're doing the hot in place.
The hot, you did it at my street.
We're gonna be doing that. We're not doing any full
Yeah.
like reconstruction.
Yeah.
And then, we're doing Pine Street, the water main this
Yeah.
year, and hopefully we'll have funds next year to repave that road, because that road's obviously, that was a disaster before you went up there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the really bad ones.
Yeah,
So,
there's a couple others.
you're familiar with that.
I live on Pine. It's fun. That's
I'll
why
call
I
you.
think I
There's
called
a
you when
couple-
that water main broke last time. I think
Yeah.
I called you before you knew about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Broke at the end of my street.
Yeah, I'll call you, because I got a couple phone calls on a couple
Sure.
streets. And I'll let you know what that.
And don't, you know, I put out there to everybody, not just you.
Yeah.
If you guys see something out there, like you brought up, let us know. And, you know, we don't take it, you can do it in a nice way, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, no, we take it very seriously, and, you know, whether it's a pothole, it's a water break, you see we got a call the other day about a hole in the field, we want someone breaking their ankle, but we can't be out there inspecting it, so if somebody can help us out with that stuff, we'll get out there and do the best, at least, temporary, put a warning device up or
I
something,
remember
trip
that.
hazard on a sidewalk,
I
whatever it
remember
could be.
Barron Road was, remember that?
Yeah.
The fiasco we had with Barron Road? I used to drive an oil truck down there. Oh, my God, if you hit my head on top of it. That's
We fixed
It
the
was
lights.
awful. It's
for
nice
the-
now.
Well, you didn't, it was on right by the police station, we had a light that was on the wrong cycle.
Yes.
I called you and guys I think it was state highway at the point, so you
Yep.
got them over here, but like, you guys responded immediately, which was wonderful, so you guys do a really good job.
You do a really good job. So you're good, Brutus.
All right, well, thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you.
That's it?
I clapped for the underdog.
A new man in town. Come on, Kevin, sit down.
Evening, everyone.
Hello. Give us a little bit of breakdown, how many buildings that you deal with.
Yep, no, absolutely. So Kevin Harn, Director of Public Facilities. The Facilities Department is responsible for managing the efficient operation, maintenance of town buildings, preserving the facility and equipment assets of the town, planning and implementing capital improvements, and managing capital construction projects. The department collaborates with all department heads, the town administrator, the superintendent of schools, by establishing appropriate levels of support for building users, fostering continuous improvement in the delivery of services, and maintaining ongoing capital planning. The facilities department ensures that every town and school building is safe, functional, compliant, and sustainable, not just today, but well into the future. Facilities maintains all the town and school buildings. It's 1.2 million square feet. Schools, public safety, library, senior center, take care of it all.
Mike?
Pretty straightforward. No questions. I'm good. Thank you.
Max, are you?
Yeah, just the typical questions. How's utilization? I guess utilization is kind of different for you, but how is sort of your utilization of people's needs, like with work orders and that kind of thing, changed for the last 5 years?
Utilization, I'm not so.
Yeah.
I'll just say what's
Has your
changed
workload
over
increased?
Has the workload increased? I think the workload has certainly, steadily increased. I mean, the demand has always been there. I think the biggest change for our department is just the recent turnover. Over the last several years, myself, other management, as well as the trades, even the custodians, our senior custodians are also, at their time of retirement.
Okay. And in terms of, you've sort of taken some cuts over the years, but if your budget has been cut 5% compared to level, I got a frog in my throat, I apologize. If your budget was cut 5% compared to level service, will your department still be able to do what it does and function? Or would you be able to meet all state requirements or professional accreditation standards? Would you not be able to operate property or risk losing required accreditation or certification?
We certainly don't want to take any cuts. We're going to continue to maintain the buildings as we need to, whether that's, life safety, and try to keep people, comfortable in the buildings. But I assure you all that, I'm upstairs on the desk sitting on, proposals or invoices or quotes of stuff that needs to get fixed, and I'm holding out, I'm waiting, because something else will break, and that's going to hold priority over doing what, broke a few weeks ago.
And are you asking for any new spending in your budget?
New spending?
New spending above level service?
The budget that was proposed was definitely, it's my first crack at the budget, so a lot of it was kind of taking a look at what was expended over the last couple of years, and that was the immediate approach in trying to gauge on what's needed. It was also a unique situation, whereas we were also cleaning up accounts. Now it's Washington Elementary, so there's no longer the Remington account. We just use the Jefferson account. Same thing with Lincoln and Horace Mann Oak. So there was some shuffling of funds, but also just kind of at the same time just trying to budget and predict for what's needed.
So you're not adding anything new compared to last year, that other than just what you might have shuffled around?
No, I mean, ultimately, gauging on what was spent in FY, 24, 25, and that's what was, that was the main use of how I budgeted for the next fiscal year.
Okay. I know that you sort of took some heat at FinCom. Do you want to talk about, or are there any members from FinCom who want to talk about the discussion there? Or if you wanted to talk about it, I don't know, George, or there was discussion around facilities at FinCom. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about what was discussed at FinCom about facilities. No. No. Okay. Okay.
I mean, I'll just mention the reduction. I was just through Mr. Chairman. So, there was a discussion that was there, and I think one of the things that two things I would say. Is one of the things that we can improve on for sure, and it was far acknowledged. The previous facilities director was here for over 3 decades. I do agree that the expense list is something that needs to be revised and looked at, and to be a little bit more clear as to what money is from what account, particularly the utility accounts. Kevin and Linda have already started working on that. That's a fairly large accounting project, but I think people have to understand, Mike had a way of doing things for many years, and Mike also, Mr. D'Angelo was hired by the school district, in the 90s when we were not a merged facilities department. And so he was really the only staff member we had for many, many years for both. So that's one improvement we're gonna try to recalibrate next year. But in terms of the cut that was proposed, was something that the town has done a few times since the pandemic, which is essentially cutting the irrigation budget for water, right? Let Mother Nature run her course and see if the lawns can stay good. This is actually something Councilor DeLorco remembers in 2020 on the football field, and maybe Councilor Cormier Ledger, a couple years that budget was reduced. A lot of it is generally on school grounds, because that's a majority of the grounds that we have, but I think they felt like just being able to trim that a little bit, given the budget crisis, was something that, using free cash to supplant the budget, that was an easy thing to try to cut. So, I'm just summarizing, I think, what the discussion was as to why they reduced that one line item.
So were they cutting it because they weren't clear what was put into that line item, or?
Well, now you've encouraged them to come up to the mic, Max.
I think in his, Tom Sullivan, Finance Committee, Town Line Road, I think part of the discussion was, as he mentioned, he had a number of different accounts. Some accounts have not closed, and that money moved to other directions, and we were trying to reconcile that. And if you remember, he came back the second night and he reconciled all those, Max. So I think that was the real issue was, okay, this account now closed and that money moved down here. And as we were trying to follow the money, we got confused too. So the next night he came back and clarified some of those accounts and how they were closed and how their money moved around. I think that was the issue.
So the cut was not related to, was the cut related to things not being clear, or was it a completely different issue?
The water is completely different.
Okay.
There was questions between money moving between different accounts over different years, but because buildings have changed, and another issue was the categorization of some of the accounts when they were being processed. I'm going to use an example. He had dues and subscriptions, I don't know, but that invoices that were going in there should have probably fell into maintenance. So that cleanup. So we had some discussion around that type of those issues.
Max.
Nothing dramatic, just more how to understand certain movement of money.
Okay. So to be clear, the reduction is not related to that?
No,
thing.
no,
It's
that
just
was
completely
completely independent.
Okay. Okay, so this is just to save money on irrigation, and that was recommended by
Right,
FinCom.
right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
I'm good, my question was already answered.
Steve?
Yes, thanks, Kevin. Couple of thoughts on the budget. I listened to the Finance Committee, I remember the whole discussion on the water. I noticed your other contractual services are up like 150, but then I kind of look back and that's kind of consistent with fiscal year 25, so net, I didn't see that was too bad. A quirky one that just jumped out at me, and it's not a lot of money, but it's interesting. Can you talk about telephone expense?
Yeah, so the telephone expenses, I think we intend to actually see a reduction in, I'm sorry, no. Our telephone system will stop receiving support in probably about 2-3 years. There was a project that was started prior to me. I want to say there was some equipment that was purchased to help us get through the next couple of years, so that as our telephone systems or phones break, we have the actual equipment to repair it or fix it. NEC is the telephone system that we have in both town and schools. I've worked.
Okay, so could I just interrupt for
Yep.
a quick second, because I wasn't clear on where this was. When you say telephone system, that's the phone system for this building, the town offices,
Everywhere.
all the schools? It's
Everywhere.
all part of one big
Yep.
phone system? So this is maintenance, replacement, activities?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately,
software.
yeah, and it's kind of to help us bridge the gap between where we're going. I've been working closely with the IT director, Tim, and we're, the phone system that we have right now, NEC, is pretty industry standard, and it's soon to be pretty much obsolete. We've been investigating, and I believe we're going to go down.
That's good, okay. That's clear. I just wasn't sure what the scope of the phone system was, how big it was, and we've had other discussions in general about the future of actual telephone systems and whether or not they go through laptops or cell phones or other means, but I just wasn't sure what the scope of the system was, how big it was, and what it serviced. So now the number makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
The only other big question I had, and you and I met a couple of weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about this, I still can't get my head around non-scheduled overtime. Right now, the number's sitting at 340,000. The budget for this year is 212, and maybe that was cut back because of all the problems we've had, but in 2024, you spent 286,000, so it's up a lot over the next couple of years over that number. I'm just struggling with how many man-hours that is and at what rate. I mean, $340,000 in overtime, and we chatted about this a little bit. We didn't have the details with it, but I got to believe we can manage that down quite a bit.
Yeah, I think, I can speak with Richard Gaskin and see if there is opportunity to reduce it. I know that number ultimately comes from the OT for maintenance and trades, the custodian OT, and OT for all school buildings. Because under the personnel sheets, it's broken out there, but 7,500, 62, and 270. It's non-scheduled overtime when custodian are needed or to come in, backfill for someone who wasn't there.
I get it. It's just a frankly staggering number.
I
think,
I understand.
Just considering everything else and considering our budget issues and so forth. I'm just really uncomfortable going forward with a number that big.
I'm sure a lot of it also probably, talking with Richard, I'm sure a lot of
God
it.
is attacking me because the sun is.
I'm sure a piece of it also probably ties back to like the turnover that the department has had with folks, moving around, and then even the redistricting, having to shuffle. I can talk with Richard and see what we can do about getting.
Yeah, I really would like to kind of chop a good chunk of change out of there, and we can kind of figure out what that is, but that just seems like a stunning amount of money for, just to carry that in the budget, so.
Yep.
Other than that, the only other thing I was just going to point out is just the cost of electricity, and again, we've talked about this. We're up 200 grand since 2 years ago. That's probably not a question for you, but maybe Jamie has some information.
Sure.
Do municipal entities get a break on electric rates from the service providers?
Nope, we don't get a break. We've got a good rate now. The rate mid-year roughly is going to fall up. We made a deal 4 years ago. We entered into a 4-year contract at a rate of $13.9 per kilowatt hour, which was pretty solid. We
Right.
basically avoided major spikes in up and down and fluctuations by having that consistent rate. We traditionally, in this environment, this decade, it's been my philosophy to try to get as long-term good rate as possible to have cost stability. What you don't see on some of the sheets was in 2022, which really was a big, big reason. In 2022, when inflation went up 14%, the residential standard rate in town was like 24 cents a kilowatt, 30 cents a kilowatt, when National Grid, went way up.
Yeah.
That was a major, major spike year, but I think that's every city or town, every, organization, right? So later this year, we are gonna have to go out to bid. We do get a generally decent rate. I wouldn't call it a discount, but because of the quantity of electricity that we provide, we've also been able to withstand large spikes in utility costs because of our green communities portfolio. So net metering credits for many years now has saved us quite a bit. In fact, net metering credits has allowed us to basically install LED lights in every school, every building, all of our street lights, things of that sort. I would say in 2008, as we've been preparing for the bid cycle this year, in 2008, we used 12 million kilowatts of electricity, and 20 years later, we're using 10.5 million kilowatts on an aggregate year. So if you look back 2 decades, we're actually using far less electricity than we did before. So even though the number in here is a large spike, we're also, part of that is also because we're using less electricity off the grid, because we've reduced our carbon footprint quite a bit with all of the net metering credits. Where do those come from? A majority of it's from the solar farm on Upper Union Street. That was a deal that was a gift from heaven. It was on the Nuns' property up there, and it literally overperformed beyond belief, and we had to have some serious conversations and exemptions with National Grid and other providers on the net metering credits because the thing was just way over production. And state law, as you know too, is changed quite a bit. Every 3, 4, 5 years, they change all the regulations at the federal and state level on electricity. So even though that sees a couple $100,000 increase, over the last couple years, generally speaking, I try to tell people this could be way, way worse.
And I know we've talked about it, and we've talked about.
You've got a lot of experience in this too. So
but the rates and the negotiating we were doing and so forth, it just seems to me like, topic for another day, but I just.
But also consider, and I'm, knock on wood, some of the early estimates of any electricity rate hike this coming year. We've had reasonably positive news. Obviously the war and all this other stuff, you kind of assume the geopolitical environment would skyrocket everything, but fortunately that hasn't been the case yet. So we'll be going out to bid later this winter, entering into the calendar year of 2027 on a new rate. So,
okay.
But we don't get any breaks, unfortunately. Maybe that's an issue for the legislative delegation when we come in here in September.
Well, it may be, because I would think that's a cost that we've got to pass on to taxpayers, right? So if you want to complain that we're getting a break, but it's everybody else that's getting a break too. So maybe that's something that's worth pursuing, so. Otherwise, that's it for me, Kevin. Thank you.
Kevin, Jamie?
Yeah.
We talked about the solar farm. Are we gonna get any benefits from Maplegate?
Nope.
Nothing, huh?
Well, we'll get revenue for, well,
we get revenue, I know that, but.
Tax base will be significant.
Right.
So, right now, because it was a golf course, we weren't really generating the value that we normally get. Now that it's got, all the solar, well, if and when it all gets built, right? All of that, all of those solar panels will generate new growth. So it will develop tax base. So we will get a pretty significant revenue source in our tax levy from that project.
Electricity.
But not, not electricity and not pilot agreements anymore. I mean, there's still a little donut hole there, but remember the days you'd have a pilot agreement and then you'd be able to get revenue off the side, not just the property tax base, and the legislature ended the pilot agreements. I mean, it's been, legal changes have been significant over 10
I was just kind of curious.
Not the money we used to get when you first got on the council.
Yeah,
We
I was
got a
thinking
lot of money at that time.
Yeah, and I was thinking of the non-property, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow, if we could get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Caroline?
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, thanks. I just have, I think, 2 questions. So I noticed that your staffing is you as director of facilities, you have 3 deputy facilities directors, 1 facilities administrator, and 1 construction supervisor, plus, you know, some other people. That seems like it is a little top-heavy or a little administrator-heavy. And so I would love to know kind of like how that's broken down, like what the roles of your deputies and administrator and construction supervisor. I feel like I can guess what that.
So, well, we actually, so there's, you know, there are 3 deputy directors. Deputy Director of Custodial Services, which is Richard Gaskin, the Deputy Director of Trades and Maintenance, which is Steve O'Neill, and the Deputy Director of Facilities is John Eason. John ultimately helps out with pretty much all of our systems, implementing different policies, and also supporting myself for larger capital projects and if I'm not around. And then we have administrative support with Karen Tulloch and Irene McDonough. I mean, is it top heavy? I mean, oftentimes I think, you know, when, especially for yourselves, you know, you get put in a position where you have to, you know, take a look at the numbers for the whole town, and sometimes you often think of it like a business. The facilities department is a $9 million, if it was a $9 million company and you had 6 managerial or administrative people managing $9 million, I think I don't think that's unreasonable.
I don't necessarily disagree. I was curious more. I know there's lots of conversations in town and departments about like kind of administrator-heavy departments, and so I think it's helpful to kind of hear, well, they're in charge of this, they're in charge of this,
Yeah.
and how that's split up. So I don't necessarily disagree, but I was looking for some clarification.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Could I just add one clarification? It says a construction, I think you mentioned a supervisor position. That's actually the official name of our carpenter. So because he has a construction, like,
He's
yeah.
got his license.
It's a CSL construction
Yeah.
supervisor,
Yeah.
so that's actually the carpenter.
Okay.
Just to clarify that.
Thank you. And then the only other question I had was, for capital budgets, we voted on the senior center sprinkler system. I think that was like $750,000. And I believe at the time you had said that was like an estimate on the high end, right? And so you weren't necessarily expecting it to kind of hit that number. Do we know, has anything been, I'm not actually sure where that project is at the moment, like have we?
If that was if that's how I came off, I apologize. Maybe something that I did say was, you know, it could be less, but I will absolutely assure everyone here, it could be more. The $750,000 estimate was like an industry standard that they take that project and they take like a cost per square foot based off of the trade or the industry and the footprint of the senior center. I want to say it was like a $41, $43 per square foot. The senior center is 18,256 square feet. And where that project is, fortunately, we actually just recently developed a RFQ for a designer, so that went out. We had a site walkthrough, and I think in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna review the qualifications that come through in June, early June. Sorry, I don't have the top of it. Lots of projects.
Yeah, thank you. I know they are happy to have that project getting moving. So if it does come, if the 750 is under budget, I mean, not, like if the project comes in above 750, where do you pull the rest of it from? Like, does it come from cuts in your budget somewhere else? Or are you coming, do you come back to capital? Okay. And
I'm not so sure.
That's fine. We got the answer. And so then, I guess the flip side of that is if the project comes under the 750, do we know what happens to the money?
Jamie, we
extra
put that back in.
Goes back to capital.
Good, it depends on the number. I mean, if it's, you know, a
If it's
lot of
$12,
times.
it stays there.
Excuse me?
If it's $12, it stays with that?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends, and to be honest, you know, a lot of capital accounts and schools have the same exact thing. When we appropriate capital funds, you know, if a van is 77,000, we buy it off the state bid list for 73,000. Actually, what the town is very successful at is that 4,000 that maybe there is a difference, something else is gonna break, you know, somewhere in here or there, or the schools. And then Jana can come up to me and I can sign off that invoice so that if something breaks and they want to use that 4,000 somewhere else or something else. So, you know, if it comes in at 250,000, well then we'll come back and make sure that everybody's aware, you know, okay, we have another $500,000 obviously to do something, you can do a whole other project. But one of the successful things about Franklin is that reality. If you were in town meeting in a town meeting form of government, you'd have to wait to spend that excess for a whole nother year and go through a whole nother town warrant process. So it actually allows the schools and the town, particularly around facilities, this is actually probably pretty unique to your department. It does allow us that when a water bubbler breaks or the high school has something wrong or a toilet, you know, we can actually use some of that excess to go fix those problems and not have to go back through the whole cycle to do it. And I would just say that I think today, more than ever, people are looking for instantaneous gratification as fast as possible. So if there is something that's wrong and we can afford it, we try to solve those problems, you know, in real time to try to help people out.
So they come back to you, so you've got like a tally, like you happen to know, like, oh, this came under by 4,000 and this, like.
I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously I monitor all the capital accounts, right? I mean, most of the stuff are fairly good quotes. You know, I think when you look at police, fire, and a lot of that stuff, and I think the schools do a good job. Remember, a lot of this is on, most of these items are on state bid lists. When you're getting into facilities, there's a whole other set of rules. If a project is over $1 million, you know, or a project is over 1.5 million, you need an OPM. There's usually Chapter 149 procurement. I don't want to get into procurement lessons right now, but there's a lot more that's involved with large-scale projects with facilities, whereas most of the other capital accounts, you know, the quotes are pretty accurate, or they're within, you know, 1%, 2%, or whatever like that. So
okay.
This one is unique because you don't. It is frustrating. The procurement laws are frustrating. That you know, you'd love to get the bids, but you can't put the bids out without an appropriation, particularly on large numbers. And then you got to go back through all this. You know, the system is not very streamlined. However, the systems are built for public protection. I mean, public procurement laws are a symptom of extremely bad behavior in the 70s, where there was widespread corruption, and so unfortunately that's just the way it works. And I think it's mostly around Kevin's department. You're going to find these dynamics because you just, in an environment where market labor changes and tariffs and fuel and things like that, a project could come in at a lot more expense. But also when there's a competitive environment and you have an open bidding process, it incentivizes for those folks to get those jobs to come in under bid and maybe you know, kind of take their pens and pencils to their sheets and say, okay, we're going to go a little. Also, one other quick factor in that is Franklin is very, very well respected on paying its bills. So we do very, very good job, which is reflected in our audit. So actually our bid prices are fairly competitive. When I talk to my manager friends, you know, we can do projects oftentimes a lot more affordable than a lot of other communities because we're very, very well known for paying our bills. So that's something that is a positive. But again, on something like this, it's hard to really fully know what the price will be. I hope that gives a little bit of
Thank you. And thank you. I think that's my last question. I just want to say, like, I think you did a good job hitting the ground running this year, and like you said, it's the first time taking a crack at the budget. Anyway, I think you're doing a good job. So
Thank you.
throwing that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. What's the total value of Franklin's structural assets? Like, you need to tell up a value of the schools, of this building, of the historical museum, like everything that we own. Do we know?
It's a Maya question.
That's a Maya question.
We can look it up. I mean, that's actually a Julie question because it's for our insurance.
Okay.
So we'll just see if we can look it up.
All right. And I only bring that up because we often talk about the underfunding of many departments, and we've talked over the years about underfunding facilities, right? Because we know there's more money needed for the maintenance of these buildings. We know that there's gigantic capital projects coming down the road for school roofs and school structural projects. I look at your budget and I just wonder, you know, is that in line with, if we were to look at, you know, the total value of the properties, and is that money in alignment or is that money off? And maybe comparing it to similar sized towns with the same number of buildings. I don't know, have we ever done that sort of study to say, you know, here, because we've done it for police, we've done it for fire, we've done it with DPW, we've done it with schools. Like, I don't know that we've,
Yeah.
you know, taken that sort of deep dive with the facility conversation.
Ted, I did not forget that you brought that up, and I did do some research, and I've always, you know, kind of looked into it when I had an opportunity. So not every town is going to be apples to apples. You know, like you know, it's unfortunate. I would like to compare, like, you know, Randolph, you know, or Dartmouth. But the thing is, you know, there's a town facilities manager, and then there's a school facilities manager.
Okay.
You know, I did, if there was a town, I mean, I did find Norwood. You know, Norwood, population 31,764, it's 11 square miles. Their FY26 budget, 9,339,830. They manage about 1 million square feet, roughly the same, a little bit less buildings than we have. You know, Franklin, population of 33,743. With like a $9 million facilities budget, managing 1.2, kind of teeing, you know, Max, you were asking about metrics in the facilities world. You know, a lot of our, you know, metrics would be like, you know, work orders open to work orders closed. You know, also, you know, energy use intensity. So always trying to make buildings more efficient. But another metric that, I mean, you could maybe similarly kind of use is like $1 per square foot. So if I look at Franklin's $1 per square foot, what our budget is to 1.2 million, it's $7.50 a square foot. And then if I compare that to Norwood's, you know, a little bit higher budget and less square footage. So, you know, they can spend $9.34 a square foot. So you got an extra $2 a square foot of buying, purchasing. You know, I mean, it's not, again, it's not apples to apples. It's it's difficult. I try looking into it, Ted. It's tough, but I'll look even further and more.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I just think it's helpful as we continue to have these conversations about cuts and about what these real impacts are, and about, you know, things that get, perhaps, I don't like to use the word neglected, but a lot of stuff kind of gets put on the back burner. You know, we heard from Brutus about projects that just can't get funded, and we sort of kick the can down the road. I think historically we've tried to apply money to facilities and to projects through capital, but I know I've seen on so many lists how that's growing and growing and growing, right? And I wonder if we're talking about the $75,000 being, you know, taken out, you know, so that our grass gets brown over the summer, and everyone will love that. And Councilor Pellegrini made a comment last time about grass, and she regretted that every day since then, so I'm not going to talk about grass. But I wonder if that $75,000, rather than taking it out of your budget entirely, can be moved to perhaps an actual maintenance of a major project. And I'm thinking, if we, you know, just like as we're all sitting up here, right, the school department and the volunteers in the arts department and the theater department identified $100,000 at the middle school, right, that they needed in that auditorium. And they've been fundraising like heck, and they got 25 grand toward that 100, which is amazing. But if we could say to them, we're going to take $75,000 out of irrigation, and we're gonna put that with the money that you've got, and we're gonna get that project done this summer so those kids have the best possible auditorium to hit the ground running in the fall. I think that's a nice story, right? And I think that shows people that we're listening and we prioritize the needs of the school and the kids more than the grass. But rather than take the money out entirely, we just move it to a place where it can be applied. Just a thought as you're going through the process. And I know we're not voting on anything tonight, but it was just sort of in the back of my head of like, would that be money better spent on this, the community's crying for this, and it'd be nice to be able to say we were able to do it. So.
Absolutely.
The total valuation that's on our insurance for property and casualty is 400, we couldn't get into the portal, but we had the quote from last year. So from a year ago, it was 424 million. Evaluation on school and town buildings. That's the insured, that's the value that we insure.
That's what we insured.
Yeah, so a $9 million, basically, between the maintenance and the staff and the management on $424 million, that seems low. Do we know, Jamie, how that sort of compares to, other?
I don't know. I mean, I think after this budget season's over, and we're happy to have Kevin do a little research, and I think the more applicable thing is trying to look at districts or communities that actually have a completely merged facilities department. I mean, you really, Kevin's correct. I mean, we're one of very few that do it this way. It's actually a story that we should be telling over and over to taxpayers, because if you go to most towns, they've got a whole town facilities department with a director, deputy director, staff. They've got a whole school facilities director, deputy director, staff. So from a staff efficiency standpoint, like technology and like a lot of stuff we do, we've got one department. So in terms of like the operating budget comparison that you're saying, I think we'd have to try to do an analysis a little bit. And there are other communities out there that do this, so we'd have to just do a little research, and we're happy to do it. I think it's actually a very good project, and given the transition from Mike to Kevin and the team, this would be a very good time to do that. So we're happy to take that on. That's actually, I actually don't know the answer to any of that, because I don't know many other communities that I frequently interact with, particularly in Norfolk County. I don't know of many other communities that do it the way we do it.
Yeah, and I only bring that up because we talk about efficiencies and costs and things with every other department, right? And we talk about comparing it to similar-sized towns and similar-sized schools, and all of these metrics across all these departments that are presented for 2 nights. I think it's an important conversation to share with people, to say, we have $424 million worth of structure assets in this town. That's a gigantic amount of money in buildings, right? And, we obviously have to invest in them to keep them up.
Boilers, roofs, windows, water bubblers, generators. I mean, right, just like our house.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question. I think, for a long time too, and I think just the narrative of the fact that we're not having all that duplicative staff, right, has been something the community has certainly understood as an efficiency. But it's certainly a great question to ask, and I'm kind of now curious myself. So we'll do some research this year for sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kevin, I know you hit the ground running. You were thrown in like a ball of fire, but you also lost. You lost your plumber, right?
Yep.
You lost your electrician. You lost a lot of talent. And you are going to lose your carpenter is gone July 1st, if I'm not mistaken.
30th.
Oh, the 30th? I knew he was close, because he's already went down and signed the papers, but I know that for a fact.
I know that.
How do you know that?
He's excited.
No, I know that because my wife was the one that got him to sign the papers, but, so that is, that's a lot of talent that we lost. And
institutional knowledge, right?
And they do a lot. They know where every nook and cranny is, where every valve is, where every, where every circuit board is. So it's going to be a learning curve. It really is. And to your affect that, you know, we were talking about overtime money, that there's gonna have to be a little bit in there because we don't have the talent that we had, you know, and the number is high, I agree with you, but we're gonna have to put some number in there because, you know, you guys are, you're gonna take longer to fix a door if you have to go find a hinge because John knows where that hinge is down to the thing and he'll go reach it. I just know what you're going through and it is gonna be a learning curve. So we get, you know, I'd like to support you as much as I can because I know. And then you're gonna be, once you get there, another 4 or 5 years, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you know, but it's gonna take a little bit of time.
Gotta keep those
But,
guys.
you know, but you gotta keep them and hopefully we get somebody good coming in, so, but that's all I have, so.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't think we have anybody else.
We miss anybody, Judy?
I don't
I think
we
there's
have,
one quick
right?
question on benefits maybe, but I will tell you, like, you know, you're gonna be looking at a whole new benefits budget in a week and a half anyways, but I
Right.
think Councilor Malloy might have had a quick question. Other than that,
I just wasn't sure of the sequence or when we did this, but I just see OPEB mentioned in there, and I don't know when, or if we're gonna have a conversation on OPEB, under benefits.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about it now, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
you should be all knowledgeable after Dan Sherman's
Yeah.
report, but
Yeah, I mean, just my own personal
no,
opinion
yeah.
is that I don't think we should contribute to OPEB this year.
Oh, I agree with you totally.
Right.
I'm with you 100%.
So it's just, it's in there, and I think there's a second OPEB payment, $450.
so,
Are we held
so
out
the,
or-
the OPEB was recommended to be taken out from the FinCom.
Right.
As I mentioned last night, in my revised budget, we'll incorporate every single recommendation the Finance Committee made. And I've talked to the staff about that. That's the right thing to do. They did a great job. They did a lot of hard work, and we want to honor that work. So, if the council agrees with some of their recommendations, great. If they disagree with their recommendations, that's up to you.
I just wasn't
And
sure
number
what the
two-
sequence was, okay.
Yeah, well, the deduction will be in my revised budget next week.
Okay.
And then, you're correct, the OPEB, free cash policy, contribution, I recommended to hold it until we see how all this shakes out. So you all will have that conversation on June 10th and June 17th for sure.
Okay.
So whenever there's excess free cash, that'll be included in the metric and you'll be able to, use it as you see fit. And, obviously, as I said last night, I'll have a recommendation once the healthcare comes in on the, healthcare deficit, at least as of we know it, today. I mean, obviously, June will be a whole nother month. And then that's gonna take, I would say, 6 months to transition out of the strategic health group. The GIC, obviously, for our employees will take effect July 1st,
Yeah.
but, there's gonna be deficits throughout. There's gonna be stop loss rebates, there's gonna be prescription rebates, and so it's just gonna be a complicated thing for 6 months. And so I'll make a recommendation based off we have a board meeting on Tuesday, I'll have a board meeting in June, probably 2. And as that moves on, I'll have a recommendation on the best avenue right now to try to balance addressing that deficit, which will be probably pretty large. And so, we're gonna, that'll come up at your next 2 meetings.
The 10th.
The 10th and the 17th.
10th and 17th.
You can only do so much in one night, right?
Right,
I mean,
right, no,
Janice,
no.
you and I talked like,
Yeah.
because you also got Community Preservation Act coming. I'm sure there'll be a lot of that. And there's also, if you look at the last year's agendas, as these guys know, there's like revolving funds that have to go through, there's the year-end transfers, there's the stabilization transfer for snow and ice, there's the town clerk salary vote. I mean, there's probably gonna be, Carrie and I were doing, probably more than that, probably about 10 to 15 resolutions or so over the next couple meetings that y'all will look at. And I'm gonna try to get all of them onto the Finance Committee agenda, so have you guys have your cups of coffee for the June 3rd. Most of these, just so you know, are fairly routine. There's no changes to any of them, but they are legally required votes. The MEC stabilization transfer into the budget, if the council wants to do that, that actually has to be a separate resolution by law. So there's a bunch of procedural and formality votes that will be affiliated with the budget.
with free cash or the CPA budget that you're just gonna have to, you know, obviously take up, so.
Okay.
There'll be a bunch of stuff.
Anybody else have any questions?
No, but can we kind of just have a quick conversation on how everybody feels about the usage of free cash? And where everything is being projected now? I know numbers are gonna change, but I think that we've done the questions to the departments. But I think it's good if we have an understanding of where we feel individually based on recommendations from the town administrator, from FinCom, and the overall issue with the budget and how we look to rectify it. Is that something that we can do before we close the meeting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because I'd kind of like to know what everybody else feels about the usage of free cash. And then I clearly want to tell you how I feel. So, just putting it out there.
Okay. Mike?
Well, I agree with Jane, because I've said this before. I do think it's important that the rest of the counselors put their stake in the sand, so he knows what everyone's thinking. But before we do that, I did want to see if we, I don't know, did the school committee, are you able to answer that question that I asked last night, Lucas? I should have came over and asked you that.
That's okay.
Are you ready to answer it?
I just would say we did what we could in 24 hours,
Correct.
but I think the idea is to try to say that if we applied, and the caveat is obviously school committee approves our budget and where it goes, just for the caveat. If we applied the funding, I think you referenced 300K as an example. Like the highest paid sports, for example, at 1,000 could come down a few hundred. And then the smaller fees would get less of a break. Some of them are right in line too with kind of where people are paying for those. Transportation as well could come down somewhat, but it wouldn't be too drastic. So I just would say that to you. And I left last night. There's so many different perspectives. I appreciate your question too. You guys are going to deliberate. I'll go sit down. But I appreciate it because you were asking that question, and then I know some feel that we should reduce the school budget. So it was just a wide range, and I think you have all come with your own perspectives and your own individual opinions, and I hope to listen in on the group and see where the consensus or what the direction is as we move forward. So we did what we could in a short
Correct.
order.
Understand.
And then the other piece I'd say is with that, because it was not permanent funding, those are always the tricky conversations around like a 2-year promise or things like that. So there are other things in my head. It goes to like curriculum, things like that. But that was to answer your question directly. That's what the impact would be.
And I think ultimately, again, just based upon what your comments you just said there, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is if we were to put 300,000, as I said, give it back to the community, like literally, you would look at it to be not adding curriculum, but more reducing in fees for transportation or athletics. That would be the better use of those funds.
I did the model based on the question that you asked was if we put it as a pass-through direct to
correct.
citizens. What I'd say is, what I'm saying tonight is, just to be upfront, you guys have been very honest with me. I'm not saying that would be the best use of that money at this moment in time. Also, I'm trying to defend a budget that we tried to come in at pretty disciplined so that we weren't coming in over 2.5% and adding all these things. We did a lot of fiscal work before even showing up here with that number. So I was more sensitive after like the 2 years that we've lived through, the context, and the reorg was trying to deliver this year on, hey, let's show the work. So the idea of, I wasn't ready for a question about adding money because I was coming into this, the whole season has been, and my message to all my principals was, hey, we did all this work, we've reorged, we've reduced, we need to come in and here, we're gonna show the community here, try to build some public trust around here. We came in at 2.5%, and we had to reduce before we even came here. just to point that out. So I wasn't ready, and that's the best I can share with you, but I'm not committing to say that that would be what we do, and the school committee would have to vote on any placement of that. So I just don't want to be misleading to the community in this moment to say that. But you did ask that question, what would it look like if 300 was infused in and it was passed through on fees?
Yeah.
That would be the result of that option.
Beautiful.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
And that's the only thing, before going back, I agree with Jane, I think but I just wanted to make sure I loop back Lucas for that question. I talked to him after, and I wanted you all to hear what the impact would be. But that's all. If you want me to speak, I can speak about.
Go ahead, you might as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Go right
you
down
all
the
have
line.
known where my stance is. I mean, I had mentioned it over the last couple of nights. There are some things that have been added above and beyond, and I agree with where they are. I agree with, this is crazy, I mean, I agree with additional funding to pass through to save money. Yes, it is a use of free cash. Yes, it is, my plan is to do it for 2 years. Yes, it is to buy us time to get, for everyone keeps on saying 7 new counselors. You have to understand how this has to work. You do, you have to understand how it has to work. You're not, it's gonna take time. And the comments for today that I heard, the meetings are too long. Well, because you all have to figure it, we all have to figure it out. You're asking questions. The prior council had been through it 18 bazillion times. So they are long. So they are long. We got to find a way to shorten them. But the point taken is we're all learning how a government has to work. And while it will be using free cash, it is not sustainable to use free cash. And I guess, and this is to the community, I'm asking personally for 2 years of doing this so that a plan can be put together that's got long-range goals to it. And I myself, and I believe the other 3 members of the economic, we are going to find a way to drive economic development in this town to drive up the new growth. We have to. That is why we need a deputy. I'm not even opposed to that. I want to add an economic development person to this budget if I could.
Full-time.
Full-time.
Yeah, I agree.
It pays for itself. My point is, it's going to take free cash. And when you talk to some residents, they'll go, oh, yeah, we really need to add the deputy director. They agree to it. But where's the money coming from? It's got to come from free cash. We're not robbing the Peter. We can't rob Peter to pay Paul anymore. So you all know how I felt for a number of months on this. I put my stake in the ground. I'm even willing to add more to it. And the fact that the numbers are going to come better from the state is going to help out in that regard. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really tough. I think, from a financial standpoint, of course, using free cash, the coal grows bigger every year, and according to the five-year fiscal forecast, which is a little out of date, well, in FY29, we're expecting a $2.5 million deficit. And so, if you look through this budget, try to cut $2.5 million, there's gonna be really painful cuts if we don't raise revenue. And so I don't really think, I'm just looking at the audience and how we've kind of had a jovial meeting today. But I really don't think we recognize the severity of what's before us in the future if we don't take action. And I think that we really need to start, for those in the Arbornite, if you're at the senior center, if you're at the schools, if you're, a police officer, I would start organizing. If you're in a union, organize with your union. You have to take action now because these cuts are going to be very severe when we're not able to use free cash anymore. And every year we use free cash, it's a million, a few million now. Next year it's going to be more than that. And it's going to be more than that the year after until eventually you run out. And then you're going to be stuck cutting everything you were using free cash for and then some. So yeah, I think, we have to be frugal with our free cash. We have to, make sure that if a department is using free cash, they're giving something back to the budget, not because, as a public entity, we do have we do have to look at the public need. But in the short term now, in the short term situation, we got to look at how do we balance things so we don't fall off a cliff. And I think this is a stopgap to give people breathing room, because we need to have breathing room because, I see the stress in people when they talk about budget cuts and what's going to be me. But I do think while we catch our breath, we do need to take action and encourage anyone listening start taking action now. Because, you know, I think Jane is right. I think, you know, there is an issue with using free cash, and there is a danger. I mean, the option is we cut now, and I don't think that will give us, if we do that, we won't have the political ability to sort of recover from that. So I think this is a short-term option to give us the political breathing room to come together as a community and do what needs to be done. But I am nervous because we're acting like everything's normal when the place is on fire. And we're just sort of putting our blinders on to make sure, with this budget, to make sure that everything's fine. And it's not. So, like I said, if you're in the audience, if you're at home watching, if you get services from the town, which is basically everyone, you know, start organizing, because we're gonna need you. And with that, I yield.
Thanks, man. Jane?
Want me to go last, because I'm gonna be a minute.
Go for it, yeah.
Okay. With this budget, I'm extremely split down the middle, and here's why. I was the voice that said we don't hire new people when we're in a deficit. You just don't do it. I was the Facebook post, and I was standing at the citizen comment microphone, and these were the statements that I made, and I 100% fully believe in that. We're using free cash. What we should use it for to buffer is take the departments as they are as an FY26, add what we need to for the increment cost updates or the COLA raises and the things we have no control with, and just take enough free cash to balance their budgets so there are no layoffs, there are no cuts, and we can all breathe for the next 365 days. And we should be using the saved cash for that reason only. And then we have other stabilization funds or whatever for budget, whatever. If we have to shift it over, but the goal is to eventually get free cash to traditionally be what it was for, capital expenses. To get every department what they get in their budget, to be in their budget and not constant capital requests. These are goals we all share. This isn't gonna happen overnight because we did not get here overnight. We've been sitting here for about 6 or 7 months. We're only just starting. We only just started with subcommittees. We haven't even had a chance to really sit down and talk with each other. I've talked to some of them separately, but some I haven't met with yet. And we need to do that to still align. We need to talk to all the departments and understand everything, because not all of us have sat here for that long. If we didn't restore anything, we would literally be able to keep an additional roughly $775,000 in free cash. What we also have to remember is within the health department, around somewhere in FY27 and 28, we're gonna be absorbing $67,850 into our operating budget, because guess what? The grant is over. We have to accommodate for that. Restoring and bringing new positions totals roughly $775,000. Next year, they're gonna get a 2.5% increase on their salaries. That brings you up another, $19,000, which means now that's an additional $793,000 in the FY28 budget just for the restored or new positions being asked for. That's more free cash that we have to use. If we use less now and we keep it there, we'll have a bigger fund next year, even if we transfer it to someplace else or wait for them to, what's the word you told me, Mark?
Certified.
Thank you, recertify it. So let's wait for them to recertify it, because then we don't have to use it. It's kind of like getting your tax return. You know it's coming, but you can't use it till the government releases it, so it's just like a built-in tax return at the end of the year. If it takes 6 weeks for them to recertify or 6 months, it's just a built-in savings account. We know eventually we're getting that money. But I'm torn because I could justify the deputy town administrator. even though I know that it looked as I was against having one for many years when all this started, it wasn't. I understand it, and I understand things a little bit even more now than I did when I wasn't sitting here. I don't want, just in case, like this succession plan, that's a real thing. Knock on wood, nothing happens, but something happened to tomorrow, we have nobody here, and I'm not really sure Chief Lynch is gonna wanna do the job. So, that's a scary thing. We are going to have these subcommittees, and we are gonna start demanding that we have more frequent meetings, because it is the only way to come up with a sustainable plan. In order to do that, it is not fair to Julie. It is not fair to Jamie, because that is a lot of work. And yes, I do get your emails at 9 o'clock at night, Julie, and I respond, thank you, because I'm still on my phone.
And I appreciate your response.
I could justify that, but even more than that, I could justify that one coming back because we are violating a contract.
Right.
Now, I didn't have any part of that contract, but it doesn't matter. It's still a contract, and it is not a good look for the town, and I don't really feel comfortable with violating anything. I am not a rule breaker, if anybody hasn't noticed. So, that troubles me that we're legally violating something, and because Jamie hasn't wanted to be
Right.
the mean guy, he hasn't forced the issue on that.
Correct.
So that I could justify, even though free cash is totally against my policy. I could also almost see restoring the SROs, because they literally touch every part of this community from top down. And that would sustain our police department, and they make their staffing levels where they need to be right now. That allows us to have the next year to really come up with a sustainable plan. I'm not against a munis person. I'm not against having someone go into the assessor's office. I think those positions are warranted and real. But if we don't know how we're gonna pay for them, if we don't have free cash, we have no right bringing them in, making departments count on them, and having somebody think they have a job. And I get what you're saying, Councilor Blank, but are we gonna hire them and say, we're gonna promise to keep you for 2 years because that's what we guarantee to use in free cash, but in 2 years, you might be laid off? Who's gonna take that job? Knowing that they could be fired in 2 years, especially if they have one that is guaranteed not to let them go. I just think we're juggling with fire. And I don't know if I could approve the budget as it is, and with all respect to finance, because I did watch your meetings, and again, in real time, because to speed, I couldn't understand any of you. So, and which is why I didn't have a lot of questions, because you guys pretty much asked all the questions I was going to. But I really think if we're going to do it, I think we make sure our departments are where they are successfully, possibly the restore of those positions, and that's it. And that's the less free cash we have to take. The other option is if Jamie doesn't want to push for a DTA and wants to wait, then we say no to all of it and we just balance everybody where they are and give ourselves a year. I don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face. And the bottom line is, if something happens, what happens? If we're planning a budget that's going to require at least $2 million of free cash every year, and we have a major capital expense come up, are we gonna then tap into those stabilization funds that we can't really touch because it hurts our AAA bond rating? Do we wanna break the only safety net that we have? And my answer is no. I want a lot of things, but I don't deplete my savings to get them because I have to prepare for that water heater to break. Okay? I have to prepare for something to happen. Free cash is an easy safety net that we can use, yes, but it should be used strategically. And that doesn't mean bringing back everything. It doesn't mean bringing in new people. It means giving the departments some breathing room so they don't have to go back and say, now we have to figure out cuts between now and June 10th or July 1st or whatever the date is. And they can just start focusing on going in forward next year. And we keep as much as we can because it will carry us longer. Because even if we come up with strategic plans and they're phenomenal, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time to implement them, get them in place, and then it ultimately takes time for the revenue to come in. Which means we need to count on free cash for a long period of time to sustain us. So if we didn't do all this and we could keep like $1.5 million in free cash, next year we get $4 million, now we got $5.5 million in free cash. And if we do the same thing, we keep building it up. So instead of depleting every year we're a little bit higher. Then we get to a point where we can safely do these things. And if revenue starts coming in, then it's just icing on the cake. But it's not fair to have departments depend on a munis person just to rip it away from them when we can't afford that salary. It's not fair for the assessors department to become used to having somebody in there just to rip them out when we can't sustain their salary. And with the increase in the inflation, we're gonna need more free cash to balance a budget with especially new employees. Because each one of these departments are gonna go up at a minimum of 2.5% to 3% again next year for the things that we don't have control over. That's at least another 3% out of free cash that we are gonna need to buffer this budget. And we're asking to add more costs into it by bringing in more people, causing us more benefits. You're just compounding the deficit instead of actually trying to get rid of it. And I get why. Because every department deserves to be able to breathe, and they all deserve to have the help they need, so they're not working till 9 or 10 o'clock at night or 7 days a week. It's not fair. And I agree. So, but I think if we don't try to do something more on this lines, they're gonna continue to be doing that. Because it's gonna get to a point where we're gonna end up saying, guess what? We don't even have the free cash. You need to make cuts. I don't wanna be sitting here and saying that when I know that we could be doing something this and strategically planning to buffer that budget for several more years so nobody has to lose their job. And ultimately, we need to protect our employees just as much as our residents. And that means not making them have to join that unemployment line. And using free cash and bringing in all new employees, we're pushing somebody closer to that unemployment line because free cash isn't promised. And like I said before, we have another year like 2020. Guess what? There is no free cash. What happens to it then? Because we become so dependent on it. I think we need to be really, really fiscally responsible here. And as much as I want to say to every department, you can have this and you can have this, because I hear them and their wants and needs are real and genuine. But we're not fiscally able to do that, and we need to just admit that and then stay within the budget that we can afford until we can afford more. And now I yield.
Steve?
I support the use of free cash, not all of it. I think Jane makes a good point, and she and I have talked about this. We should use what we need to, and then, in my opinion, save a good portion of it during the course of the year, to Jane's point, to add to our potential use of it for next year and the year after. I think adding back the positions that we've all talked about makes sense. Some of them are revenue-driving positions. Some of them are just important community positions. I don't want to go backwards. We are where we are. Those positions were eliminated last year. We have a chance to bring them back. I think that all makes sense. I would, and I guess over the next week or two or three, I have some thoughts on some reductions to the existing budget as it's listed today. They're not staggering, but I think it's important to show some response to our fiscal deficit and not just spend lots of free cash. So I'd like to suggest some trimming in here at the appropriate time, but to use the free cash to get us where we need to be to stabilize. And then, as Mike said, work really hard to kind of focus on the growth side of this.
Yes.
In terms of other opportunities to raise revenue, expand, build, do things in town that are going to net tax revenue for us. And I would like to spend the next year, as we kind of go through, thinking about all of that growth. I'd like to look hard at a couple of town departments, and I'm not prepared to speak in detail about it right now, but I'm just not convinced that we don't have opportunities to become a bit more efficient, become a bit more lean or smarter, if I can use that word, in terms of how we deliver services. And maybe that's a year or two to kind of develop some of that, but I think there's some potential savings there. I'm really mindful of the fact that we do have this fiscal deficit. It's 2 million, depending on how we figure OPEB and all these other things, and we can work that down and manage it with some free cash. But every day I go through my notes and I study all this stuff, and I remind myself every day that our house values have increased $270,000 in the last 3 years.
Just look at mine.
Yeah.
No.
So the average home is now worth $731,000 in Franklin. So even though we get 2.5%, according to, the 2.5% tax increases, we paid 6% more last year. If you really look at your tax bill versus what you actually paid, we paid 6% on the property tax side. Somehow commercial and industrial went down. I still don't understand that, but it went down. So I'm very mindful of the fact that people are paying more already, not to mention enterprise funds and how they've increased, Community Preservation Act, all kinds of other things. So I'm very sensitive to the fact that people are paying a lot more. So as I think through all this and I balance it all out, I keep those factors in mind as well, because it matters to a lot of people. And I think we have to really try everything we can do to balance the ship. So long-winded way of saying I have no problem using free cash as little as possible with, a 2 or 3 year horizon. Yeah.
Moving things around a little bit.
All right, I almost don't have to talk because Jane said it. But I will say that, first of all, we keep saying we need a strategic plan for how to resolve this fiscal deficit cliff. And step one is don't hire people with free cash. I mean, I spent a lot of time looking up what that strategic plan would look like, and everywhere I looked it up said that is the first step. Don't hire people with free cash, because you run the risk of having to let them go in another year. Because, let me back up. It is just not fiscally responsible. We have a budget that is working for us right now. We made the cuts last year. We would love to restore things, yes. In my house, when things get tight and we cut our Disney Plus subscription and my kids are upset about it for a month, if I get a little bit extra money from a tax return or something and I subscribe again, but then the next year I have to cut it, plus maybe some other thing, they're gonna be more upset. I know that we've heard that restoring things is good for the community morale, but I think we're just setting ourselves up for a bigger hit in the future if we're not able to resolve this. As a member of the Economic Development Subcommittee, I definitely think that we have some good plans. We're not gonna make $800,000 in a year. So, we're, again, hiring people, we're setting ourselves up for a potential real big issue. I would love to have the SROs back. I would love to have the munis administrator. I will also say that hiring people, even in revenue generating departments, they're not assembly line workers who are creating the exact number of widgets that the other person is. So you're not gonna necessarily go, okay, well, we have 3 people in that department and they're making 900,000, so we expect to hire another person who can make 300,000. That's not how it works. There's diminishing returns. I don't know that we can say this position is gonna return this exact amount of money. So I would love to see some of those positions come in. I just don't think that they're necessarily fiscally responsible. I don't think we should be restoring things. I said, we made the cuts. I think we need to kind of say, well, we haven't increased anything. We haven't added any more money. We need to stick with the cuts that we made because that was the smart financial decision at the time. I will also point out that it seems like, since no one else is speaking for the schools made the biggest cuts, and they're the ones who stuck to 2.5%, and they're not getting any restorations here, while other departments are. So that's an interesting note that I noticed in this. I also think that, thank you to the Finance Committee. You guys did a lot of really great work, and I watched it, and, my brain was numb at the end of it, so I don't know how you all did it. But I think the most fiscally responsible way to look at the budget for June 10th is to say, as Jane said, we look at the increase in each department, the COLA raises, and what they need to cover exactly what they did last year, with inflation, and then we add back. If there are things we want to add, we start at 0 and we add back, and that's how we make the most fiscally responsible. We don't say, let's throw everything at it, and then we have to figure out how to chip away, because that's not the best way to save money. And then I think we figure out how to make money from there, but we have that pocket of money that we've saved, and we have it to dip into. We're not down to $200,000 in free cash in case of any emergency that might happen. We've saved ourselves the headache in the future, and I think that's the best way to go from here. That's Jane said it all.
Having the benefit of a few years now on the council is an interesting perspective, because I've seen every year the only way we're able to balance things is to cut. The only way we're able to make anything work at all is to slash here, slash there, continue to ask more and more and more of the staff that we have. And we proposed a couple of overrides for different amounts, for different things, right? And they didn't pass. The community didn't buy into what we were selling. So, okay. And I have served on the capital subcommittee. I've advocated for those operating expenses to come out of there. I've been fighting for years to try to chip away at our long capital and facility needs. But now I'm reconciling in my head that we need to try something different, because it's not working. For 20 years, the councils and the school committees have come together and said, we don't have enough money. You can go all the way back, right? We can talk to Ann Berg, and you can talk to Sue, you can talk to Tom Mercer, you can talk to people that have been around that have done this forever, and we just keep saying the same thing, right? Like a new group thinks they have, well, we're going to find money, we're going to cut, we're going to do these various things, yet every group before them hasn't been able to do it. So now I'm in a different place. Now I'm saying Councillor LeBlanc has championed the use of free cash to supplement positions that are revenue drivers. I'm of the mindset, as much as I don't love using free cash to pay for positions, because I want to use that free cash for its intended purpose of the capital projects that are so woefully needed, we haven't been able to come up with any other way all these years to drive some of those revenue things that we all know we need. So I'm in line, somewhat of a compromise between Mike and Jane of, maybe we need to use some of that money for some of these positions with a goal of 2 years. We're going to work really hard. We're going to boost. We're going to see if that works. And we're going to try, to bring revenues up and see what those positions can do. And at the end of that time, if nothing worked and we're right back to where we are, we know historically that free cash brings us about $4 million a year.
You're right.
Right? Like pretty much guaranteed We can go all the way back. It's right around that number every year. And we've been good about, we put money into OPEB, we put money in stabilization, we put money into the fire truck account. Like, we've always been really smart about that. And we were able to do that, but kind of like I said a few weeks ago, sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? There's no easy solution to any of this. But I also recognize that Jamie needs help. And I recognize fully that there is no other way to pay for the deputy TA and get us out of breach of contract. So you have my support to do that. And I applaud the schools for being able to keep within their 2.5%. Thank you, Lucas, and your whole team for that. But we also have, we said to a gentleman this morning that came to council office hours, like, because he was questioning some of the positions in town as being wants versus needs. And I pushed back on him a little bit and I said, they may not be a want to you, but they may be a want to 500 other people. Or 1,000 other people, or, whatever the group is that value having somebody at the Historical Museum, or having a Corey to run arts and culture, or these groups that said, I've lived here my whole life and I've wanted these things and we finally got these things. They're important. They add to my value of life and my happiness in town. So there has to be a balance between where we cut and where we try to meet people where they're at and still balance this quality of life and keep the beautiful town that we have and the culture that we've built and keep trying our hardest to move forward. So maybe we can't use the whole amount.
Right.
Maybe we can't bring back all of these positions, and maybe we have to have that discussion about a couple of the revenue driving ones are a little bit of rolling the dice, but are we willing to do that? And maybe the SROs are, what the community is crying for and saying, please, if you do nothing else, bring back them. And maybe it's the deputy TA, so we not only make Jamie whole again, but we have a long-term succession plan and we can do the responsible thing. None of those things are going to be easy, and putting these economic numbers on these staff and these positions and on these subcommittees, it's absolutely going to be a lot of work. But it's something new, and it might be the only thing we got left to try. And to the earlier points, I think we absolutely, Mike, whatever we can do with some of that free cash to help some of those fees, and hope that our friends in the school committee can listen if we say, hey, if we can give you this money, can you give a little relief to some families? Because they're dying out there, right? They're dying out there, right? On top of the tax bill and on top of the electricity bill, on top of all this other stuff, you got a kid that wants to play sports, it's killing parents, especially with more than one kid. And on the other side, we talked about the capital needs at the middle school. Well, the arts kids and the theater kids shouldn't have to be out, canning for dollars at Stop and Shop for their building. Like, how freaking embarrassing was that I had to walk past those kids the other day and give them any change I had in my pocket, right? So their parents have raised $25,000. Let's meet them where they're at with some of that money and make that whole again and make that group of kids happy and those parents happy and celebrate some of these wins. So instead of being stuck in this rut and this sort of woe is me, everything is horrible, which drives everybody down. It's the worst possible feeling to have. We can start elevating people, feeling a little bit better, and maybe come together as a community around some of these economic conversations, come together as a community. Maybe it's not the large override conversation, Jane. Maybe there's a smaller number that people can get behind that sort of makes things whole. But we're not going to get there if we keep taking things away from everybody and if we keep just adding more and more fees. My conversation yesterday about trying to put some small fees into fields and things wasn't to add a burden to parents. It was just to try to be like, all right, nonprofit, you're raising a ton of money in your fundraising. Can you help the town out a little bit? I think $10 a kid or $20 a kid isn't an unreasonable thing to help with lights and field maintenance and barrels. But if nobody wants to meet me on that, that's okay. Then we got to be able to do something else. So the plan has my support for probably 75% of it as presented. And I would, and I would want us to try to take the remainder of that free cash and do some creative things with it so people get a little help. And if there's any money left over in any of that conversation and it goes to savings and it goes to some of these other funds that we haven't been able to properly fund, then so be it. So I yield.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp, I think, as Ted, as Steve. Some of the free cash, definitely restore the deputy TA position. And try to use as little as free cash as possible if we can. We'll have to see what comes out of, other savings that we potentially have with the healthcare and everything. Then maybe we don't have to use as much free cash, but Carolyn also made a good point. You don't want to hire positions and use it for recurring expenses. It's a bad thing. I remember I was just talking to Mark. It's one of my first introductions to kind of Franklin politics was when we rebuilt the Oak Street School, but we didn't have the money to pay to run the Oak Street School, and so they voted to take money out of stabilization to pay the operating expenses. And then what happened? Well, for years we had the structural deficit, and when we went to have an override right after it, the override didn't pass. So I think it's better if we're, okay, we're very conservative about restoring positions. At the same time, if we have to go for new revenue, and I like Mike's idea of trying to do it through new growth as much as you can, but if we have to go for new revenue, we're telling people what they're going for, right? You're going to get these positions, you're going to get this, we're going to restore these services, we're going to lower these fees. We give something for people to go to rather than what we've kind of done in the past, which is, this is if you don't pass it, this is what we got to cut. I don't want to be back there, okay? I was really uncomfortable saying, okay, if you don't pass the override, this is what has to be cut. Okay, so I want to keep it in a positive direction. Last thing I'll say is that on this is that there's other ways. Mike brings up one way of growing revenues through new growth, okay? Steve brought up the fact that residents paid, 6% increase in their taxes, not 2.5%. And that's because the revenues go up 2.5%, but the taxes, are different depending on how it goes. And so residents, when they saw their tax bills, were like, oh my God, what if the override had passed? What would I have been seeing that? That would have been, pretty bad. So we have an issue there, which is only, which Massachusetts gives us a way of addressing it. Franklin has never chosen to do that, which is to split the tax rate. I've modeled here, but we could split the tax rate. We could then, we could give the residents a reduction in their taxes, but still eventually go for an override and still keep their taxes lower and still have the lowest commercial industrial rate in the area relative to our other residents. And we Jamie, I've heard you talk about Needham before. Needham has a split rate. They have about, I know we have about 18% of commercial industrial roughly for ours. 20. Yeah, Needham's about 21 or 22. They're not much higher than we are. Yet they dramatically split their rate, and they have a very low rate for their residents. So I don't want to necessarily be there because I know we want to bring in and we want to draw in people. But as long as we stay lower than every other community around us, we're doing pretty good, and we can maybe all these years that we haven't split our rate, this is maybe an opportunity we take advantage of it and not kind of soak the residents. That's the way I feel about it. I'm doing my homework on this. I think that that's one way, but I'm also very open to growing new growth, by investing. Maybe the deputy town administrator can help, help build and continue to grow, especially bringing in new business and creative ways to bring in new business. We have open buildings here that that can be occupied. especially because, Franklin's a great community to live, so I'm surprised that people aren't taking advantage of that. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Gene. So I'm kind of in line with Gene, Ted, and Steve, too, and Mike. I do want to restore the TA and the SROs, if we can, definitely. I believe that kids that see police officers in the school, I think that's a good, that they can go to, and I really think that's, I've seen a lot of mental illnesses and working with the Safe Coalition, and, they see a person in uniform, they're more likely to go up and fend to them and maybe get some help. I do believe that we are responsible to help with the students, and I think one of the ways is, I love Mike's idea about giving the school the $300,000 and bringing the, they did something, they really did something, they gave us a little bit of a break. And I think that's kind of our job too, a little bit, to help them out. And I like Ted's idea about, maybe if we take that $75,000 out of facilities and give it to the school there so they can fix that up there, and they raised they did a good job, they raised $25,000. Let's help them out, let's give it to them so they can have a good place to perform and do everything. So I think that's, and we don't know our final numbers, but, with Mike's point too, with the, we're gonna have to start working really hard with economic development and getting a lot of things in. Mike's got great ideas, and the committee has great ideas, so I think they're gonna work really hard and help us out. Just to bring the town together, I think we gotta help them. I think that's our goal. And I think we don't know where they are, and I do believe, I like your idea, Steve, too, is let's move some money around here and there. We won't have to spend as much free cash as we need to, so it's gonna be interesting 2 weeks, let's just put it that way, and let's go to work on that, and that's all I have, so, anything, Jamie?
Nope, like I mentioned, going into Memorial Day weekend, we're trying to put the final numbers on. We still have some GIC reports we're waiting for. A meeting with the superintendent and our finance staff, as we usually do on Tuesday, just to try to make sure we have some space to get up to speed. We'll have a new budget book and a revised TA budget on Friday, May 29th. Finance Committee will review it on June 3rd, and then all of that will come back to the council on June 10th and June 17th, as I described before, and then maybe we can enjoy summer. I know there's a lot of stuff to do, but I think it's been a great 8 months, and certainly a lot of hard work has gotten done. And before you know it, it'll be the 4th of July. And then obviously last on the agenda tonight are the fees. Just a quick overview on that. The fees that are in here that are being proposed.
Close the meeting?
Close the
public hearing first, right? So before I close the public hearing, I would like to wish Sarah, our senior director, she's getting married next week. Congratulations, Sarah.
Is anybody going to be at the senior center in the next 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of marriages going on down there, huh?
Yeah, Emily's getting married 2 weeks from now.
I know.
But I declare the public meeting closed.
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
Hearing.
Public hearing.
Yeah.
Did I say meeting?
Yeah, it's okay.
Hearing.
I know, it does. He's sharp, man. I missed it too.
Only because when she goes to prepare the minutes.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So next on the agenda is the fees, right?
Yep.
Legislation for action.
Legislation for actions. Bylaw Amendment 26-952. Bylaw amendment, the code of the town of Franklin at chapter 82 and
Subsection 82.
section 82-6, schedule of services fees. This is a first reading. The clerk will read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Town of Franklin Bylaw Amendment 26-952, Chapter 82, Fees for Municipal Service, a bylaw to amend the code of the Town of Franklin at Chapter 82, Section 82-6, Schedule of Service Fees. Being enacted by the Franklin Town Council that Chapter 82 of the Code of the Town of Franklin, entitled Fees Municipal Service, is hereby amended at Section 82-6, Schedule of Service Fees, by making additions and deletions as follows. So I will only read in the packet what is proposed in red. Passport photos to go from $12 to $15. Certified list of abutters to go from $35 to $40. The ALS base rate 1 for ambulance fees to go from $2,583 to $2,701. The ALS base rate 2 for ambulance service fees to go from $3,684 to $3,794. The BLS rate for ambulances to go from $1,760 to $1,885. And mileage within the ambulance fee section to go from a $41 reimbursement to $43. Under the inspections department, variance for special permits residential, $200. Variance special permits commercial, $350. Comprehensive permits to be $100 per unit. Electrical permits for solar panels, but it doesn't give, Jamie, just for clarification, it doesn't give any special language there. It just says,
It's just specifying one of the various.
it's just
permits.
adding solar panels to that language? Okay. And under special permit, let's see. Sign approval has a proposed fee of $75. The Beaver Street Recycling Center annual sticker fee going from $35 to $50, still a bargain. And curbside trash overflow bag to go from $3 to $4. So this bylaw amendment shall become effective on or after July 1st, 2026. But because this is a first reading, I'm not reading the bylaw amendment, Mark, right?
I'm sorry, what?
Because this is a first reading, do I have to read the bylaw language, or does we wait for that for the next time?
It doesn't, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Okay.
you already read the one half of it.
Okay.
At the top.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody heard the bylaw amendment?
Discussion, first reading.
Motion to move bylaw amendment 26-952 to second reading.
Second.
All right, I have a motion in the.
Can we discuss first?
No, well,
You
I can-
discuss now.
We can discuss now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just had a couple questions on this. Can
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So for things that don't, like variant special permits, residential, commercial, sign approval, those don't have previous amounts, those are new fees?
Correct.
Okay. And also for the certified list of abutters that I've now lost, going from $35 to $40, that is something that a developer or whoever is trying to, like, that's something that they would pay, correct?
Correct, it would be the
okay.
applicant.
Okay,
And it's it's for liquor licenses, it's a variety of different things, it's not just for development.
okay. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, going a little higher, if that would be in line. And then I just wanted to comment that I appreciate the increase in the recycling center. I know we had talked about that before, and several of us had said, $50 still seems like a really good deal. I happily pay that $35 because I use it a lot. I will probably just as happily pay the $50, and it's still certainly better than when we first moved here. I didn't know that was a thing, and I hired someone to come take something away, and it was like $185, and I was like, wish I'd known about this at the time. $50 is still a pretty good deal. So anyway, those are my.
It's for a year, too.
Yeah, for a year, exactly, instead of one-time thing. Yep.
Man.
I just wanted to see if the community community assistance program is still on the table for the future, just so that we can lower some fees for people this might be unaffordable for. I know people are kind of hurting right now. The other question is if someone has a $35-gallon trash bin and a $65-gallon recycling cart, can they still do that and still pay the lower fee?
Man in charge of the carts is coming up.
Oh, boy, I know you.
Derek Adams, Environmental Affairs Superintendent. So we don't offer a small trash cart with a large recycle cart. You can either get 2 large carts or 2 small carts.
Is that something that's cumbersome to implement, or is it just something you don't offer?
It's just never been offered, and it just keeps uniformity for the program overall and keeps some of the back end.
Okay, just because I want people to recycle more, so I assume if they could get the bigger recycling cart, that would incentivize them to do that.
It's something we can look at for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and then the other thing was the solar. I'm concerned about, we want to encourage people to do more solar installations because it's good for the environment, and we're all about, green being green. I understand we do want to generate revenue, but I just want to make sure it's not something that hampers people from implementing solar panels.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Max, it's always been that price. It just never was a line item.
Okay.
So it hasn't changed.
Okay. Okay. And with that, I'll yield.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Weren't we talking about increasing the parking fee for people who stay on the road in the snow?
I think a couple of you mentioned it at one point.
Did
I was
we
going
not
to
do
say
that?
in my opening comments, just that these are fees that through the budget, I mean, we did a whole fee, market study. Julie did a great job 2 years ago. So a lot of our liquor and other fees are completely commensurate with market, rates in like other towns. Like the example, you can't say, oh, $10,000 for a liquor license when every other town is $2,000, or else you get sued and you'll lose. So most of these fees are solid. However, through the budget process, a lot of department heads came to us in the budget meeting and said that some of these, because of price increases, were there. In addition, Gus can speak to the variance, residential commercial, as well as the design review. These are new fees that we haven't charged before, and people that apply for certain permits just pay nothing, so we don't think that that's fair, and so they came forward with these. You all brought up, I think, a few different ones, the recycling, but also the parking. You can amend this bylaw right now to add things in, change them in. You can also add them in and amend it on second reading. But you need to get first reading done tonight so that you can do second reading in mid-June, so it takes effect on July 1st. If you wait, then you go into the new fiscal year and things get a little bit more complicated. So, but the council has full discretion to be able to make any adjustments to this that they want through an amendment process. So if you wanted to add that fee or adjust that number, Councilor Callaway-Tripp, you'd make an amendment to change it, and then the council would vote on that amendment, and then it would be incorporated if it passed.
Do I make that now?
You can make any amendments you want while the discussion is going on.
So what do we technically call that? Snow parking tickets?
I don't even see
Is it a fee or is it a fine?
It's not a fine.
Right.
You're talking about a fine, not a
Right.
fee.
Talking about a fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
What
then
are we
we
looking
won't
at,
do that
police?
now.
Yeah.
But I thought,
Parking
okay.
fines aren't on here.
That's a penalty. That's treated separately.
That's
Oh, is that in a
civil
different part of the
violation,
bylaw,
right?
Mike?
Yeah, it would be listed as a penalty under a particular bylaw.
Right, like-
Do you want us to prepare a do folks want to do that?
I do.
Can we review all the fines?
Yeah.
Do you want to review all the
All the
fines?
fines, just review
Sure.
all the fines.
I think that's mighty fine.
You've been full of jokes last week.
Just,
Yeah.
not to undercut the TA, but if there were to be any amendments, in my opinion, it has to be no later than first reading, because there's then gonna be publication, And so people have to have fair notice of what it is you're
And
proposing
we're
to
only,
do.
and we're doing it on the
If you
17th.
wait until second reading, I think there'd be a problem.
And that's the last meeting before July 1st.
I'm good, because I was talking about the fines, so no
Okay.
amendments need to be.
I thought the police were in here, the fines were in the same section, but I apparently.
No, they're in each section, throughout the entire town code. There's fines all over the place, so.
And which one was that, Councilor Calaway?
The one when people
Over-
park,
on the
when you're
street?
not allowed to
Yeah.
park on the street. I don't
Okay.
know what we technically call it, and my brain is mush.
The
So-
snow ban?
Yeah, when they're parking there and then they're not
I
moving
think
their
there is a
cars.
fine
There is.
provided, but it's not a very high one.
Yeah, it's not an
like 25
incentive
bucks or
fine. We need to
something?
make a fine that's an incentive for them to move their vehicles.
Go ahead,
This is
man.
a change of topic, but I actually have an amendment, if someone's willing to second, to lower the extra cart recycling annual fee from 168 to 100.
Where are we, Max?
Last page, extra cart recycling cart annual fee. Just want to make it easier for people to recycle. I don't know if that many people even have that, but, I mean, I'm happy to reallocate fees a little bit more, but.
Yeah.
I don't think many
have it,
people
and
take
I
it.
second that.
Okay.
Motion.
Oh, go ahead, Deb. Go ahead,
The
Darren,
comment that
second.
I'll make on that is it's just based on, it is commodities based, and on the back, so we don't make money on recycling. So just keep in mind that we of course want to promote recycling, but we have to be careful with all of that, because the more we collect, it will also be associated with more of a tipping fee. So just to keep that in mind.
But
If
do we
we,
pay a lower tipping fee for recycling than we do for trash?
we do, but we also are under the threshold for contamination, which means we have a really low contamination rate, which means our rate is better. And I think we should just be cognizant of the fact that, based on trends that we sometimes see, is the more available you make something for cheaper, the less particular attention perhaps some people would pay, is all I would say about that.
Through the chair, what's the per unit cost of the town to buy them in the first place?
$75 per cart.
So,
And that was one calendar year ago. We did our last order. You got to order them 100 at a time.
So, I mean, I am open to raising the trash cart fee, just compensate, if that would raise more money. Are those funds segregated, or are they the same fund?
Recycling gets tipped, trash gets disposed of. So they're separate, but now we're just pulling levers, and I can't answer right off the top of my head, but I can look at it several different ways and give you some options of what that would be.
Okay.
Max, I know a lot about this because I served as the recycling committee chair for 10 years. So ultimately, if you do that, then folks would dispose of more in recycling and less into trash. And ultimately, we pay less of a cost for disposing of that trash. And all the fee payers have to pay for that, for that cost. So anything we can do to incentivize people to do more recycling is always better, considering that, we pay more for trash than we do for recycling. So I don't think people would choose it unless they wanted to recycle more, and they just don't because they don't have enough space in their cart. So I don't think it would be something that's like a lot of people take advantage of. I do, but I think it's good, it's not a bad idea to incentivize it, further incentivize it.
My concern with lowering the recycling fee and while raising I would love to lower the recycling fee, maybe to 130, keeping in mind, all the things we just heard, but if we raise the trash cart fee at the same time, my concern would be people would take more recycling, they're gonna, instead of throwing things away in the trash, they're gonna throw things in the recycling, so they have spare space there, then we're gonna end up with a higher contamination rate, we're gonna lose our good tipping fee, or rate, and we're gonna end up kind of cutting ourselves off at the knees where, we had worked hard to promote recycling, now we've kind of hurt ourselves.
I agree with that, but you're.
So that's my concern.
Well, in terms of this amendment on the table, is this?
I am for lowering the recycling. You said to $100. If that seems like it would not make sense, then I'm fine lowering it to something like 125 or 130 instead, but still bringing that down a good bit. I would love to get another recycling cart, but I haven't because it's pricey and, but, you know, and I'm one who will like hoard recyclables until the next time. So anyway, I guess that's all.
Super quickly, if people read the National Community Survey, they will remember that recycling was like extraordinarily high for an approval rating in this community. I actually don't think you have a problem with recycling. You have a community that excels at recycling, and the data showed that we were like double-digit points above the national average at how happy people were, at how the rate that people recycled. I mean, the work that everybody did years ago before I got here clearly worked. This community is off the charts. If you look at the data from the citizen survey, I mean, we excel at recycling. I get the incentive, like I get it. I'm not arguing against the monetary, but I don't think you're gonna see an enormous improvement because people already here recycle at an enormously high rate and they're already very, very dedicated to it. So I don't know if you're gonna get a huge bang for your buck by recycling, by changing the fee structure. You're also gonna lose revenue, right, into that fee. And so you're gonna start shuffling around some of the costs that Derek said, you know, with how we have to dispose of these materials. Some of the economics are just gonna get a little strange. So I just wanted to mention that like our town is like nationally known for our recycling program. Like it is extremely good.
And
Thank you.
one more thing I'll say is that you can, if you have an annual pass to the recycle center, you can bring in unlimited quantity of overflow recycling there. We have a compactor there.
That's a good point, too.
And the other thing to consider is there is a per household, per week fee for just collection of any cart that's out there, whether it's trash or recycling. So that's another factor to play into it.
Just quickly, I mean, while I appreciate the amendment, I'm not gonna vote for it. I mean, only because I think this is a case of, and I hate when this stuff comes up, we just didn't do our homework before this. We didn't know how many recycle carts are there, how many of them, like, unfortunately, Matt, you made up a number. We don't know what that number impact is. So I do think maybe next year, this again, another reason why we're all learning, you gotta do this. You gotta do this before the meeting, you just can't drop it in the meeting, unfortunately. And I do think, as some other people say, I'm just gonna throw it in the trash. So, I'm not gonna be for the change at this time.
Yeah, well, Mark has
To dovetail on what Councilor Blank just said, an issue came up that we were missing a fee, as the building commissioner alluded to. And as a matter of housekeeping, we reached out to staff to review the fees and make sure that we weren't missing any others. So this is essentially housekeeping that's coming from the staff who has familiarity with these as opposed to policy and whatever else. So my recommendation would be to just do what's essential tonight to get these gaps filled, and you can have further investigation, discussion at a later date as to anything else.
Well,
That would require withdrawing the
yeah, that would
amendment.
recall withdrawing the amendment, but, I mean, we do have
Or
a...
you can just vote it down.
We can just vote it.
Right, just vote it.
Why don't we just vote it? Vote the, so how am I gonna do this? I'm gonna vote for the amendment first, right?
Right.
So I'm voting for the amendment.
Because we're not voting on the fees
Yeah.
tonight, it's only the first reading.
Right.
But you still have to
Voting on
amend
the
the
amendment.
I'm
bylaw.
voting on the amendment on the fees,
On this extra recycling.
on the extra recycle.
Max proposed $100.
That's correct.
Instead of what?
Instead of 168.
168. All right,
Was there a second to that?
There was
there is
already,
a second.
It was seconded.
There is a second to that, so we have to vote on the amendment before we vote on the bylaw. So,
Unless the person who made the second withdraws it and then.
well, we're already, we're past that, so let's just vote. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
No.
No. Amendment fails.
Do I have to record that somehow?
Good, Ted.
Because I'm like, I don't see it.
All right, now, we're gonna vote
Well,
on,
No, just moving
we're
it to
not
a second
voting.
reading.
what,
It's because it's just the first reading, but I do have some additional questions.
There is
if I
one.
can.
Okay.
We do have to vote to move to a second reading.
Yes,
yeah,
that part, okay.
but he
But I do have some
he's
questions.
we're in discussion.
Yes. So, Gus, the comprehensive permit fee of $100 per unit, that's new?
No, they were always there.
They were always there.
They were always
And
there.
can you describe who would be paying $100? Give me a
40 Bs.
project.
40 Bs.
40 Bs.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right, perfect. The other question I had is I brought this up when we were talking about the sewer and water for Union Street. And I said, I think we need to have a unified fee or a unified process for that. It should be $15,000 for everything. Would that be technically in this, something that would have to be as part of this, in this structure, in this bylaw, or is that to another mechanism that would be addressed?
Two things. One, it would be addressed in the water sewer bylaws, so it
Okay.
would not be in here. Two, we should have a discussion offline
Correct.
about that issue.
Correct, yes. I just wanted to know if it had to be here, yada, 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 so it'd be
Wait a
water
year.
sewer.
You didn't wanna
Okay.
wait a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All set.
Go ahead, Max.
I just wanted to say, I just hope that, was hoping that maybe this issue could be brought up next year and studied if it makes sense. Nothing else.
Can you bring it up earlier than next year? Can you-
Yeah. You guys can have, you could
can
spend
change it.
every meeting
Yeah.
doing fees. Like, you can do this all you want. No, you could. I mean, I'm just saying, you can bring it up in July, August, September, like anytime.
Maybe there can be, the other issue I could be,
Yes,
the other issue with regards to the split with the big bin and the small bin could also be brought at the same time, if that's something makes sense.
I think a good idea would be, I think I made this recommendation, I think, this is Kathy Morad over here. And Derek, no, I know I'm late, because, you know, the big cheese had to go home, right? You know, don't you love Brutus? He leaves these poor people here, but, you know, is he listening?
Because he's got a speech
He's getting
to
tired,
write.
right?
Yeah.
But,
He's got a speech to
I
write.
think,
Worried
I think
about
a
his
good idea
speech.
would be also just be, maybe meet on the side about the community assistance program as well as the data to I think Mike's point, you know, having a little bit more background and just meeting with Kathy on the revenues and the dynamics would be helpful. And if there's a recommendation there, to Mark's point, happy to bring it back. You don't have to wait till next year to bring it back. If there's a recommendation that comes out of a meeting like that, you know, let's talk about it and talk to the chair.
Thank you.
So we're gonna,
Any more discussion?
any more discussion? All right, so let's
Vote to move to a
vote,
second reading?
move to a second reading. Resolution, bylaw amendment 26-952. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Second.
moved.
All in favor?